Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of brilliant and intense battle and action in the one and only Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge Season 8, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing, and proudly powered by none other than Oris Digital. Indeed, this is the series of road car turned race car. It's 80% road car, 20% race car, but 100% racing action throughout. And where exactly we made our way today as we continue the story of the season? Well, it's time for round number 6 of 8, and we have made our way all the way to United Kingdom for the Thruxton circuit. Nicknamed the fastest circuit in the UK, it's a deserved title for this 2.35 mile course. Owing its origins as a Royal Air Force air base during the Second World War, it has gradually been converted into one of the premier racing circuits in the United Kingdom, albeit not allowed to host the likes of Formula 1, given its nature and its FIA grade, but is a circuit that is annual host to the likes of TCR UK and also the British Touring Car Championship, and it's easy to understand why. As the circuit follows the perimeter roads of the old airfield, which is still used on a private basis today, this is a circuit which is fast-flying in nature and very restricted on its braking zones. Indeed, there's only 2 heavy braking zones at the circuit, with the majority of the corners being sweepers, also adding a chicane or 2 into the mix. And what you find, this is one of those circuits where you've got to be absolutely on the limit throughout if you want to be able to take pole position, let alone take victory. But then again, on the limit, that's going to be the ultimate test of consistency. And this is a circuit that will be absolutely unrelenting and demand 100% precision time and time again. So it's going to be just as much a test of endurance in terms of driver stamina and the consistency as it is going to be their ability to deliver one-lap specials. But who exactly is going to leave Thruxton feeling special and bringing home the major haul of points? Well, that's what we're here to find out today, is bringing you all the racing action live from circuit side. Indeed, as you tune in tonight, you're catching all the racing action. And the one only place you can catch it on a fortnightly basis on the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge Series, and of course at youtube.com, and search for Paul's Productions or PWP, and you can be tuning in there. And if you are tuning in tonight, well, don't be shy, feel free to say hi, let us know how you're doing and who you're excited to cheer on today and what you're expecting will go down in the UK. In the content booth you have myself, my name is Paul Walsh, and I shall be your host and commentator for this season. And in terms of our schedule for today, times in British Summertime, that's BST, or Universal Coordinate Time +1 at UTC +1, as we can see in approximately 30 minutes time. We're making our way into our qualifying session, 15 minutes in duration as always at 8:15, and we'll see all drivers out on the circuit looking to go for pole position, after which we'll take a brief breather before returning to the grid for what will be a one and only feature race. 60 minutes in duration, the risk of rain on the cards as well from what I'm hearing in my ear, and at 25 to 9 we'll see all drivers roar the way out there in full force, but who exactly is going to get it right when it's the race that's on the line, let alone one lap pace in qualifying? Well, that's what we're here to find out. But before on the brilliant racing we dine, well, let's bring you up to speed, ladies and gentlemen, the story thus far after 5 rounds of brilliant racing action. So without further ado, let's start off by recapping our championship calendar. And as we can see, we continue our journey around the globe, and this will be our one and only visit to the United Kingdom. We started off all the way back with round number 1 in Italy, then we made our way to the USA for a double header, and then we made our way to Australia for the Mount Panorama circuit before last time out finding ourselves in Germany at the Hockenheimring Baden-Württemberg circuit. But with the circuit being put to the past there in Germany, what exactly did we get to see go down at the Hermann Tilke designed special circuit since 2002? Well, it was a race that definitely saw drivers' technical abilities put to the ultimate test. We got to see plenty of battling action, but in terms of the qualifying session itself, it was a very tight qualifying session whereby we saw both the overall and AM pole times constantly swapping, with Guy Edwards almost stealing pole position overall from Stuart Reynolds, and there was a three-way fight for the AM pole position between Rob Sharp, Stephen Codman and Ian Anderson. Anderson thought he got it early on, but then suddenly it did switch hands, and in the end where it only came down to hundreds and thousands, let alone tenths. But when we did go green flag racing, well, that's where it mattered most, for the points on the line, and in the race, Stuart Reynolds nailed the start to take a 1 second lead by the exit of turn number 1, and that set up a huge battle behind him for second place, which ran rampant throughout the race. That was between Matias Penttilä, Nils Corr, Idris Abdillahi and Guy Edwards, and Daniel Perry was also part of it until an error on lap 14, and Matthias Temme joined the fight after starting from the very back of the grid due to a technical issue right at the end of qualifying, and we saw in the end them all come together, that brilliant battle for second place. Meanwhile, in the AM class, it was all about Rob Sharp running away with the win, and Stephen Codman a guaranteed second in the end, but the fight for third place was intense between Paul Goff and Ollie Carbadine, and it came down to minor margins. We also got to see Andy Chell put up a valiant defence throughout the day, particularly given the fact that he was running from 7th all the way down to 10th at certain points, and in the end he did sacrifice the fuel saving. He didn't take the approach of strategy, but took the approach of having fun out there, and it was the lack of fuel saving that held his Aston Martin back. And we also got to see Lee Berridge have a pair of incidents early on in the race, which involved him and his teammate John Roberts, and unfortunately it meant that for him and the team at Boosted Motorsport motorsport, things not go right at all. But it certainly went right for Stuart Reynolds, who the overall pole sitter converted it into an overall victory, and the pro driver was untouchable in qualifying by over a tenth versus Guy Edwards. And whilst he was surprised at Guy Edwards' pace, he admitted in his post-round interview he was able to nail that race start and drop the rest of the field by the exit of turn 1 and then just run away with the race to bring on home his third win of the season by 11.9 seconds. As for the AM class, we saw pole position going to the hands of Rob Sharp in that freeway battle with Codman and Anderson, and by taking pole position by only 35 thousandths of a second over Codman and Ian Anderson a further 900ths behind, well, you were probably expecting, as we were in the commentary booth, that it was going to be a freeway fight for the win. But given the fact that Rob Sharp was able to latch onto the back of the leading pro drivers right at the start of the race, he was able to gradually pull away from Codman and Anderson, and so therefore he was able to save the fuel, maintain the pace, and never be in trouble. And where it all meant suddenly the only trouble that would find him would be the pro battle in front of him for that second place, when then he was overly concerned, if you will, with the fact that the battle of the pros would perhaps push him back towards the rest of the anfield. But it didn't quite end up that way, and then he took his third win of the season by 13.7 seconds over his AM peers. So that was the headline act from Thruxton. Well, not from Thruxton, from the Hockenheimring Baden-Württemberg, but that was back on the 28th of April. Here we are today on Tuesday the 12th of May, and something tells me we're going to see plenty more headlines here today in the UK. But before we do get to those headlines being unveiled, well, of course, we do have the question of how did the championship standings stand after 5 rounds of racing. And here we can see, in terms of those standings at this point in time, overall, it's Stuart Reynolds who leads the overall Drivers' Championship on 101 points for Fury Simsport, head of RD Simsport's Matias Penttilä. Now, if Reynolds was allowed to run away with a win, meanwhile for Matias Penttilä, it was a day whereby after qualifying fourth, he made sure he was the one who finished runner-up in the end, and he tamed the pack behind him, but had to dig very deep in order to be able to do so. Now, his game plan was to get into lead early, which he did on the opening stint, and then after that, he was able to fuel save just as efficiently as he was able to make sure the rest of the field stayed behind him. And on the final stint, he had to battle hard, in particular with Nils Corr for that second place, and made a crucial move on lap 31, which then forced the rest of the field to stay behind him from third through to sixth, all the way to the finish line. A very pleasing result for the LRD Simsport driver, no doubt about it, but of course he still has the question mark of trying to find a way to close down the gap to Reynolds of 14 points. 10 points behind Daniel Perry, and work was not the happiest day in the office for him, given the fact he qualified 6th place, but was right in the midst of a very tight spread from 4th through to 7th in qualifying, and then in the race, we saw him stay with the lead pack initially. However, a spin on his outlap following his first pit stop drops him all the way down to 10th overall, after which he could only recover to 8th place, and it was a missed opportunity for some major points. Unfortunately, we will not be seeing Daniel Perry on the grid today. The reason for that being personal circumstances, but very positive personal circumstances. He's getting ready to compete in the GT Cup Championship in his Ginetta G55 at Snetterton this coming weekend, and therefore all eyes are focusing on that rather than focusing on the simulator today. That's completely understandable, and we do here at Sim Racing Magazine wish Daniel Perry the best of luck in his upcoming racing at Snetterton. And indeed, if you've got the opportunity to go check it out, ladies and gentlemen, we strongly recommend it, and go support Daniel Perry at the Snetterton circuit. Nils Corr, for 3 points behind, sits in full for Satellite Racing, and well, his story continues to be one where he's trying to push forward as much as humanly possible. However, he does now have an 8-point advantage over Matthias Temme, who's 5th, and the Fury Simsport driver did brilliantly to come all the way from the back of the field to make his way into what was the top 6 fight right at the very end of the race, although in the end, given how hard he'd worked to fuel save and tyre save, understandably he wasn't trying to push any harder at that point. He was just grateful to be on the back of the long train on the last couple of laps. Guy Edwards, well, he sits in 7th, but before him, Idris Abdillahi sits in 6th for Satellite Racing, and he does have 65 points to 66 of Fury Simsport Matthias Temme, and it's a further 4 points behind that we see 6th Motorsports Guy Edwards. And as we mentioned earlier on, a very impressive qualifying lap to put him on the front row of the grid, but unfortunately couldn't quite follow it up with 2nd place in terms of his finishing position, but the McLaren was looking very strong, and it's looking strong here today in practice for Thruxton. Rob Sharp is currently your leading AM driver in the overall Drivers' Championship for Aburris Racing by a single point over Stephen Codman, and the Trackmouse Racing driver will then give way to Chris Jennings, the pro, who completes your top 10 on 40 points for Axis Simsports. It's a further 5 behind for Mark Johnson, best the rest for Trackmount Racing, ahead of Ollie Carwadine, and the Roan-worthy driver on 34 points there, who's only 1 ahead of both Ian Anderson and Paul Goffin. In 15th place, it's Dennis Van Beelen for Chicane Online Racing on 30 points, equal to Martin Rendell, and then we do see Daniel Osler, Lee Berridge, Nils Corr, and Ryan Penny completing at the top 20, and from the 17 points of Penny, it is 13 apiece for Gary Tort and Simon Povey, 12 for Heinz Mayer, 11 for Gilles Gardner, and then we do see completing the top 25 Kim Such 9 points, 7 apiece for Andy Cho and John Roberts, and then behind the Quetmass Motorsport and Boosted Motorsport drivers yet scoring the overall drivers' points, Andy Marsden and Matty Wild. Meanwhile, in the AM Drivers' Championship, Here we can see the story is all about Rob Sharp at the very top right now and trying to run away. He has 3 wins, more wins than anybody else so far this season in the AM class. Keep an eye on the course. There's 3 wins to Rob Sharp, 1 to Paul Goffin and 1 to Mark Johnson. We incorrectly said on the broadcast last time out, and Rob caught us out in his post-round interview in the fact that Paul Goffin had 2 wins and that Rob Sharp had levelled the playing field, but not quite so there. Paul Goffin having 1 win and Rob Sharp now having 3. And can anybody stop the man from Aburris Racing? Well, Stephen Codman will definitely try to do his best to do so for Trackmouse Racing, with Mark Johnson not too far behind. 6 points separating the pair, and well, it's definitely a story for Steve Codman, whereby in the end started second, finished second in the AM class at the Hockenheimring, missed out on the pole position, but it was his poor opening lap in particular in the race in Germany that dropped him behind both Martin Rendell and Ian Anderson and forced him out of the fight to chase down Rob Sharp for the win. So when he did return to second place by the end of lap 2, Sharp had already up enough of a gap, and with the fuel inefficiency of Stephen Codman's Ford Mustang, in the end he wasn't quite able to play catch up. Meanwhile, sitting in third there, Mark Johnson, well, his story was a very different one. 6th place is where he started, 9th place is where he finished, and he seemed to struggle massively in qualifying. He was almost half a second off of Sharp's pole time. But on the opening lap of the race, coming out of turn number 4, it was a major spin for the McLaren driver that sent him round, dropped him all the way to the back of the field, and an unsafe pit entry in his first pit stop meant he also picked up what was a penalty in the pit lane, and after serving that, it completely ruined his ability to recover, and in the end he took 9th place. So some valuable points, but the Trackmouse Racing driver 9 that bad luck struck him once again, and well, right now is in the threat zone of Paul Goffin. Speaking of which, the Sim Racing Magazine drives only 4 points behind in 4th place, 1 ahead of Ollie Carwadine for Owen Worthy, who's increasingly looking quick, and therefore we look forward to seeing what he can do in his Mercedes AMG. Ian Anderson has been also working on his pace, no doubt about it. He sits in 6th currently for see next Tuesday, and well, can we potentially expect the Aston Martin driver today to break his way into the top 5? Martin Rendell's a point behind the privateer, but 11 ahead of Ryan Penny for Oris Racing. Next, SRM's Gilles Gardner ahead of Kim Such, completing the top 10. The Oris Racing driver right now, equal points to Lee Berridge for Boosted Motorsport, and it's a further 4 points to Heinz Mayer, who's only 1 point ahead of Nils Corr. Behind the Rowan Worthy and Axis in Sport pair is Andy Chell for Quake Mass Motorsport on 35 points, and then we do have John Roberts, Gary Toole, Andy Marston and Matty Wild completing the AM Drivers' Championship standings after 5 rounds. But what about the Teams' Championship standings, I hear you ask? Well, here they are. And as we can see, Fury Simsport on 167 points. They remain on top and right now slightly increase the lead with Reynolds' brilliant win at the Hockenheimring and also a huge effort in terms of recovery drive for Matthias Temme to make his way to 6th place. And therefore what it does mean right now is that Satellite Racing continue to have the pressure confronting them. They hold 2nd, but 3rd and 4th with their performances not being quite enough to bring the gap down to Fury Simsport, but able to keep them within arm's reach. But they need a little bit more today from their drivers if they want to be able to really mount a charge with rounds running out. Planet Motorsport, they sit in 3rd, and well, they had a rough round for both of their drivers, and what it means is they're starting to lose the hunt for the title, and maybe increasingly looking for the fight for 2nd place or even 3rd, because Trackmouse Racing are not too far behind in 4th place, and the round was a stumbling block for Johnson, but not quite so for Steve Codman, and Mark today will be hoping that perhaps he can get himself going a foot forward, and therefore help the team break away from 6-7 Motorsport. They sit in 5th on 74 points, and right now, with Guy Edwards' undercut strategy at the Hockenheimring not quite rewarding him with the overall podium he wanted, it was still solid points for the team, and do keep in mind that Gary Toole not on the grid last time out, although I do believe back today, and we look forward to seeing him joining the 6-7 team and helping them out. Then do we see in none other than 6th place, Axis Simsports on 58 points, and right now they're looking to make sure that Rowan Worthy do not get close enough to contest them, and then we do have Sim Racing Magazine on 33 points, ahead of both Oris Racing and Boosted Motorsport, who complete the order on 26 points apiece. So that's an update on the standings coming into this round, but of course we have some prizes to talk about, and here are our round 5 medal winners. Now, of course, firstly, our overall race winner medal goes to Stuart Reynolds there. Congratulations to him for bringing on home his 3rd overall win of the season. And a similar congratulations goes to Rob Sharp for his 3rd AM class win of the season. Congratulations to both of them for their winners' medals. Now, in terms of the safest driver award, this went to Stuart Reynolds as well, whereby he did not pick up any instant points, as we understand it. Meanwhile, Rob Sharp and Chris Jennings became both a close 2nd with only 2 instant points, and also Martin Rendell in the mix as well. But keep in mind that Rob Sharp will be classified as the 2nd place finisher for that medal, in the fact he was the highest placed driver with 2 instant points versus Martin Rendell and Chris Jennings. But congratulations to Stuart Reynolds, having the least instant points of everybody, and well, a safe driver there. But it's always good to see our drivers trying to be as safe and clean in their racing as possible. But as to the move of the race award, well, we have a 5th winner in 5 rounds. Like, we have 5 winners winners in 5 rounds of the Safest Driver Award, and this time it goes to Idris Abdillahi. But where exactly did he make the move? Well, let's take a look, ladies and gentlemen, and show you what the move of the race looked like for the Hockenheimring in round number 5. And as we do take a look back, this move being made by Idris Abdillahi on Guy Edwards. It was in towards turn number 12, and then he was all the way round the outside. He went for it here, and we're using the camera of the road to give him the confidence in the Mercedes. Cutting to the inside of turn at number 14 in the end. Had to keep committed, but made the move there, going in towards turn number 15. And a lovely move from Idris Abdillahi to make his way into that position and take with it the medal for move of the round for round number 5. Congratulations to him, and we look forward to plenty more as the season goes on. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now make our way back to the present, because let's tell you a little bit about our host circuit for this round. Here's, of course, the Thruxton circuit. There is only one layout, and this circuit located in the village of Thruxton in the county of Hampshire in England, the United Kingdom. Grand total of 12 corners at its core, and a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely fantastic track mats contained within it. And as we can see, many of these corners household names, including Allard at turn number 1, also the run of the chicane sequence at turns 2, 3 and 4, at Campbell, Cobb and Seagrave, where we charge our way through a sweeping left-hander of Noble at 5, and then through Goodwood, Village and Church at turns 6, 7 and 8, before going on to the backstretch of Brooklands at turn number 9, before going in towards the club chicane at turns 10, 11 and 12, to complete lap and go all over again. This will be one of the fastest laps on our schedule as well, with the lap times just shy of what is 1 minute and 15 seconds of the best drivers out there, and therefore it's definitely going to be very rapid, and we'll get plenty of laps in our 1 hour of racing. But a quick reminder of the rules before we do go green flag racing. This is a fixed setup series with setups provided by the Sim Racing Magazine administration ahead of each and every race day round, and we're running the fixed setup with fuel loads restricted to 42%. Qualifying wise, an open qualifying format shall be used, whereby our drivers will go out onto the circuit all together and they'll look to qualify together. In terms of the race, it shall commence via a double-fold rolling start as an addition of GT4 racing here in the GT4 change for Sim Racing Magazine, although I do believe our drivers are required to go single file through the chicane, and therefore we'll have to wait and see what that does in terms of the way the race starts today. Now, there are no mandatory pit stop requirements, so our drivers can pick and choose when they come into the pits, although if they do need to repair the car, they have one fast repair available, and the driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 80 more instant points, at which point they'll be coming into the pits, but there'll be no strategy involved in that. A driver shall be disqualified meanwhile if they accumulate 25 or more instant points, and should there be any instance between drivers, all race stewarding shall be conducted post-race. But with haste, let's make our way back to circuit side, ladies and gentlemen, because qualifying is getting underway, and it does so. We catch our drivers as they make the way onto their outlap. So in the nick of time, we come back to circuit side, and well, as we do see Heinz Mayer making his way on around, well, a couple of drivers already getting ready to go onto their first flying laps, including the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 of Daniel Osler, representing Paddock Motorsport today. But do keep in mind he's the only member of Paddock Motorsport here, in the fact that Daniel Perry is not available given he's making his preparations for GT Cup Championship at Snetterton this coming weekend. But as Osler makes his way on around, what can we expect here today in terms of the race, and what can we expect here in terms of qualifying? How important is qualifying going to be, firstly? Well, the answer to that is, as we do see Daniel Osler taking a lot of curb there as he makes his way over the crest of the curb of Seagrave. Well, the answer to that question is qualifying may not be as important as it would seem, because this is one of those circuits whereby overtaking is highly possible. You've got plenty of road width, but you've got to pick the right place to overtake. Perhaps the bigger question is, with regards to where you qualify, is do you qualify amongst drivers who are on similar pace to you in the race? Because fuel saving is going to be absolutely vital around here. In a way, you could say that Thruxton is the closest you'll get as a road racing circuit to an oval in the United Kingdom. Of course, we did have Rockingham all the way up to, I do believe, at 2011, at which point it was closed. Now it is being turned into a parking lot for brand new cars that manufacturers ordered in from abroad, and unfortunately Rockingham can no longer be restored, as I understand it, without a major overhaul to all of the grandstands and all of the safety and amenities that are there. But that was the one place for a major FIA grade oval in the United Kingdom, but it's no longer operable, and therefore Thruxton is the closest you will have to a racing oval in the country. But still, I digress. With the very fast-flying nature of this circuit, the slipstream is going to prove very powerful in race conditions. It also proved very powerful in qualifying, and that's why really you want to qualify in amongst drivers you think you can work with over the race, and you may be able to out-strategize as time goes on. In terms of the cars that could prove to be the most potent around this circuit, we're definitely looking at cars front engine, rear wheel drive. For example, the Ford Mustang is being piloted by Dennis Van Beelen. Also, the BMW M4 Evo is being piloted by, say, John Roberts, who we see just in front of him. And also, do not forget the Mercedes AMG GT4 machinery, such as that of Stuart Stuart Reynolds, and also the likes of Kim Such. Now, all these cars, of course, balance performance does dictate that they do have the pace on the straights, but they perhaps lack it in the lower to medium speed corners, of which we have no drought of medium to high speed corners here. So do not rule out the cornering cars such as the Porsche 718 Cayman, nor, of course, the McLaren 570S GT4, in the fact that both those cars will also be quick around there. And you also do have the middle of the ground car in the form of the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, one of which being shown up by Mark Johnson for Track Mouse Racing. This car can also be quick around here. So we do expect the handling cars, they'll be quicker through the corners, and their game will be to carry more speed than everybody else, whereas the front engine rear-wheel drive cars will have to make up for the lack of corner speed on the straights, as Mark Johnson there goes a bit too enthusiastically under the braking in towards club, and in doing so it has to take to the runoff area, and that will be a slowdown penalty, and he'll have to serve that immediately, which he does, but it will of course scupper his next laps. He's off racing line, he's lost a lot of pace going in towards Allard at turn 1, and adding it all up, it means right now he has cost himself the best part of what is 3 minutes of qualifying time. But as the first lap time's really now starting to come in, Daniel Osler setting the pace. You notice there, it's a Porsche that's currently on provisional pole, and that's why it's not a surprise right now. Every car can be effective around here, but remember, Osler, for all the pace he has in this Porsche, in the race, it'll be much harder for him to perhaps make a break in the slipstream. He's got to hope that those, if he qualifies on pole, those who qualify behind him will end up fighting each other more and more, and by increasingly doing so, they will give him plenty of breathing room to work with. However, it is an aspiration, and of course, aspirations are theoretical. The reality on the ground could be very much different as he heads up towards the timing line. But as he does so, well, we're going to get an on-board lap with Daniel Osler as he takes us around the Thruxton circuit here in the United Kingdom. And let's see how it's done by the man who's currently on provisional pole. So making his way up towards turn 1. As he does so in towards Allard Bend, coming on through with Paddock Motorsport. Plenty of apex curve there, just holding the throttle off slightly in 4th gear. Now making his way all the way for a left-hand curvature and up towards Campbell. Onto the brakes there at the 100 metre board and coming all the way down the gearbox to 2nd gear. Through turn number 2, bring it to the middle of the road and snap it over to left for turn number 3. Go over Cobb Bend as much as humanly possible, and now let the car settle down before coming through the right-hander of Seagrove at turn 4. And after that first chicane sequence, now it's up towards Noble Bend. A brief breather, but he'll bring the car to the right-hand side to open up the fast left-hander, throws the car in 5th gear, dropping down to 4th gear as he approaches the apex, and now back up the gearbox he goes, up to 5th, back to 4th there, balancing the gearbox out to improve the rotational capabilities of the car as he comes over Goodwood Bend, now through the long right-hander of Village Curve, and coming down in towards Church. You plummet downhill, you can't actually see the apex of this corner, you look to where the tyre barrier in the marshal's post is, and you turn in for that, and you'll hit the curb, and also does exactly that as he makes way out there using all the runoff curbing, and heading all the way up towards what will be the braking zone for turn number 10 via Brooklands at 9. He gets ready for his brake zone. He'll be braking about 170 metres on corner apex all the way down the gearbox he goes, trail braking down to 3rd gear, right, left, right, through club chicane, and that is a lap at the Thruxton circuit brought to you by Paddock Motorsports. Daniel Osler, a very impressive lap at that, but understandably, he's now going to go a little bit faster because he sets a 14.950. It puts him 2.5 tenths off the new pole sitter of Stuart Reynolds, the defending champion for Fury Simsport, and should he make it a 4th win of the season here today, he'll definitely be feeling as though that championship crown is getting a little bit closer to him. And it's not though he's been without challenges this season, but he's been the most consistent, as Guy Edwards, well, he sets an absolute monster of a lap there. A very impressive lap from Guy Edwards, a 14.845. So as he comes down to the braking zone here for what will be the turn 2, 3, 4 chicane, well, understandably, Edwards right now looking very quick, and the 6th turn at Motorsport McLaren continue to right towards the top end of the field. But we do look to Gary Toole just behind there. And I do apologise, so I have got a bit of a name mixed up there, saying that Gary Toole earlier on was teammate to none other than Guy Edwards. And well, that's a little bit erroneous. In terms of the teammate from 6M Motorsport to Guy Edwards, well, that teammate being Simon Povey. I do sometimes get Gary Toole and Simon Povey mixed up for some reason. Of course, that's just one of my Walshisms here in the commentary booth, so I do apologise for the confusion earlier on. But here we see Gary Toole right now making his way on around. Good to see him back on the grid with us once again. He hasn't been able to make every round due to work commitments. Understanding work sometimes gets in the way. It's not got in the way today, and already Gary looking quite quick. Currently full fastest in the AM qualifying group. Now we do say hello to a few of you there cheering on Andy Chell, as we do see Andy make his way around right now, including none other than Patrick 4, and I do believe that's Patrick 4 JT 8951, although feel free to correct me, Patrick, if I've got that wrong, who says, come on Andy, let's do some work with that Aston. And we also do say hello there to Mike Barber, or Mike Bar 2011, who says, good luck Mr. Chell, and Mike normally on the pit wall. I presume, Mike, you're on the pit wall today, or if not, you're just tuning in, or either way, great to have you both tuned tuning in. I hope you're both doing well, gentlemen. And to all of you tuning in, whether you said hello or not, don't worry, we're not going to force you to say hello, but I hope you're doing well. And if you've not had a great start to your week, well, hopefully this broadcast will turn that upside-down frown into a smile and will make it all worth your while. But as we do see at Most Wanted saying that Fury at Supersports Dominance could bore fans there, and a little bit of banter being thrown around with regards to Stuart Reynolds' pole time at the moment, well, we have to wait and see what's to come next. As Matthias Temme, the other member of the Fury Simsport team, making his way on around at the moment in the Mercedes AMG. Well, 6 minutes left to go. He's still got to find a bit more time out there. As the current provisional pole sitter in the AM class is Aston Martin. But unfortunately, it's not Andy Chell. It is instead Mark Johnson. And, well, is this going to be the day today where Mark Johnson gets on top of things once again and breaks away from all the bad luck that continues to follow him throughout the season? And remember, he did take that absolutely brilliant win all the way back in what was none other, well, that brilliant performance, we should say, and the win with it in round number 4. And well, that being all the way back when we visited the Mount Panorama circuit on the 14th of April. And Johnson finally securing that win that continued to escape him. Remember, he was so close to victory at Imola in the season opener until he found out he had to go into a free-stop strategy because he hadn't saved the fuel required. But as he heads on around and up towards turn number 2 again, well, right now for Johnson, this is definitely looking to be a qualifying session that's all turning sunny side up. But meanwhile, for Nils Corr, he follows around the Porsche there in front of him. I do believe that's the Porsche Martin Brendel, the satellite racing driver, is caught up to. This is not the way you want it to go whatsoever, because whilst he will gain a little bit on the straight, well, he's going to get way too close to the corners. And for Stuart Reynolds right now, well, indeed for Nils Corr, I think both of them there will need to swap things around. In fact, not for Stuart Reynolds, that is for Martin Brendel. Indeed, my brain in a bit of a different space there. I do apologise for that. But Nils Corr making his way on past there, and him and Martin Brendel coming to a bit of an agreement, and Martin stepping aside. For Nils, he's got a bit more work to do here. He's going to have to reset and go again. It's not the way he's waited it to work out whatsoever, but sometimes that's the way it does go indeed. But coming on the round, meanwhile, we do look down to Kim Such, currently in 19th place, and he's the last driver who has set a lap time in this qualifying session. We are missing one driver who's yet set a lap time, and that is Gilles Gardner, and well, the SRM driver might be starting from the back of the field at this point. The car currently in the pit lane, although driver not in the car, and I think for Gilles, he's just taking a bit of a moment for a bit of a breather, and well, I think also realising the fact that if he does qualify towards the very back, or indeed starts from towards the very back, he'll have plenty of company to work with, and you're trying to latch onto the toe of his rivals. So hopefully we get to see him out there, and it's not the sign of a technical issue. But with 4 minutes left on the clock, we owe you another onboard lap, ladies and gentlemen. And well, who are we going to get it with at this time? We are just going to wait for other drivers to come on around. We've had one on board with one of our pro drives. Stephen Codman goes the fastest of all of our AMs, and well, now it's 1-2 for what is the Trackmouse Racing team. Codman ahead of Johnson, 6th and 7th at this time. And 6th Motorsport won't be too impressed about the fact that right now the AM team are definitely trying to steal a bit of their thunder when it comes to naming conventions and positions on the grid. But right now Stephen Codman definitely looking very quick out there in his Ford Mustang. In terms of an onboard lap, well, we're going to get one on board with none other. Now it'll be Rob Sharp, championship leader in the AM class. He takes us round here, and as he does so, let's see what he can do in his own Porsche 718 GT4 Cayman. It's going down towards turn number 1 as he rolls his way in towards the opening corner, coming through Allard, taking a lot later an apex there compared to that we had earlier on. It gives us a good side-by-side comparison this, as he now makes his way in towards turn number 2. Onto the brakes there, the 100-metre board coming all the way down to second gear, runs a little bit wide at the curbing, and in fact then has to open up turn number 3. That's going to cost a bit of time. They're not quite as smooth a line. Now coming through, turn number 4 takes a lot of curb and just about nurses the car out as he gets ready for turn number 5. Heading towards the left-hander of Noble, and as he gets set for it, looking for his turning mark, it's really the end of the entry curve on the right-hand side as he bounces his way through. Now coming through turn number 6 and rolling his way down the hill as rapidly as he can. As he collects the apex curve there, picking them all up together. And you can see the understeer creeps in, sends the car out wide, just about keeps it on the road there, only just. And we're on a prayer, he'll now make his way into Church Bend, and he'll chuck the car in at 141 miles an hour, drops off the throttle, tiny dab of the brake as well potentially, and runs a bit too wide there, running over with speed, a bit of understeer as well, and that is going to invalidate the lap for Rob Sharp. We'll stay on all the way to the very end as he makes his way out through Brooklands and in towards the club chicane, braking as late as possible, and it's a braking zone that looks as short as it does be long, and in fact in the end it feels as though you're braking from so far away going into the chicane, but the reality is you need all that braking distance to get the car to stop. So Sharp's going to have to go again. That's not worked out for him at all. As meanwhile, Stuart Reynolds has set the benchmark even higher, a 1 minute 14.593. And well, we've got a couple of drivers in the 1 minute 14s, Reynolds, Edwards and Osler, but as everybody else is in the 15s or higher at the moment, and the mid-pack. So from 4th place in the hands of Matthias Temme, who you see here all the way through to Martin Rendell in 13th place. They are separated currently by only 6.5 tenths. Right now, it is looking very tight to be inside that top 10 overall, and will even to be on the front row of the AM class right now. Stephen Codman's time is only 2 tenths quicker than that of Lee Berridge, who currently sits there in 4th place in AM, or 10th overall. So this is going to be a qualifying session where the final lap could prove absolutely pivotal, and if you can try and gather a bit of a slipstream off another driver, teammate or not, you may be able to gain even more time and jump suddenly right towards the very precipice of the field. But as Ollie Carbadine weaves his way through the club chicane, the Mercedes driver there having to combat with a bit of understeer comes into the pit lane. So he decides enough's enough. He's not going to go any longer in his qualifying session. So I think he feels like he's done the best he can. But is that going to be enough to hold him safe? They're in 12th place as Dennis Van Beelen crosses the timing line, and he improves to 16.159. It does not move any further up the order. He stays where he is in 14th place. Lowest place of your pro drivers right now in that 14th. Now you can tell who's pro and who's AM based on the time tower. Is the pros who have the red stripe against their names, meanwhile the AMs have the blue stripe against their names. And with Dennis Van Beelen, definitely the lonely pro in amongst a whole AM field at the moment. And well, just not on the pace right now. The Chicane Online rated driver, but we're hoping he can find a bit more pace later on in the racing, because he'll be on his last qualifying lap now, as we do have a yellow flag there for none other than Daniel Osler. And so that's going to put him out of that running order in terms of setting a new lap, as Guy Edwards makes his way around. Well, 11 seconds to go here. The 6-7 Motorsport driver trying to find a bit more time as Nils Corr improves off camera to a 15.063. That holds him firmly in 4th at the moment. Make sure Matthias Temme does not leap him as Temme goes on to one last blast of the circuit. Checker flag comes out and Guy Edwards runs a little bit wide. They're coming out to turn number 9. I suspect that may have invalidated a lap. In fact, that's turn 8 up towards 9. But either way, small error there, and that could prove to be the undoing of this lap for him, as he weaves his way in between the curves. Oh, and the rear of the car comes loose there, going through turn number 11. And for Guy Edwards, it all goes around right at the end, lets the car roll off the road, and that way not obscure anyone as Matias Penttilä. He follows a whole pack of drivers towards the timeline. Rob Sharp there, Stuart Reynolds there as well. Are they going to improve? And the answer is going to be, as Matias Penttilä, he invalidates his lap, literally crosses the line, cutting the chicane a bit too aggressively, and unfortunately for him, he was on a brilliant final lap, but he threw it all away with one tiny mistake, and therefore he'll stay 6th at best. But a couple of drivers still on laps, including Lee Berridge as he comes towards the line, but he decides, nope, it's not going to improve. His time is done, and therefore he makes his way into the pit lane. We still do have Andy Schell out there. He's going to be one of the very last drivers to set a time as he heads in towards the club chicane, coming on through. And what will the Aston Martin driver do here as he weaves away right, left, right he goes. And by looks of things, that's coming into the pit lane. He's going very slowly on through, so he's not going to improve. Kim Such, meanwhile, well, he's got right behind him Daniel Osler. Do either of these two improve? They'll be the last drivers to get laps together, with Mark Johnson coming up behind. And the answer is going to be no improvement for them and no improvement for Mark Johnson. So qualifying is complete, ladies and gentlemen. And in the end, it is going to be Stuart Reynolds who takes overall and pro pole position by 2.5 tenths on a 14.593, ahead of Guy Edwards. And McLaren driver once again impress him to make his way onto that front row, and Daniel Osler and Nils Corr will complete row 2. Meanwhile, it's an all-AM row number 4. Pole sitter Steve Codman, and alongside him is Trackmouse Racing teammate, the two of them separated by only 63 thousandths of a second, Mark Johnson. So this could be a golden opportunity for the teammates once again, much like it was at Long Beach back in round number 2, but we'll have to wait and see whether that will come to fruition or not, because indeed what will happen there was a nightmare back in the US of A, but could it be a very different day today? Well, we won't have long before we do start to find out the answer to that question. But as we do transition now into the warm-up period, we do have 5 minutes here for our drivers all to take a bit of a breather, also to get some more laps in. Now, we did mention earlier on about the risk of rain here today. Well, we can tell you that we are using timeline weather, which means that we are not based off of a forecast. There is going to be wet weather at some point, and we can give you a rough idea of when it's going to arrive. We can't show it up on the screen, but we can talk about it, and we are expecting, as the day goes on, more cloud will come over the circuit. You'll notice that gradually the sun is going away in the background. The ambient lighting is declining, and we're expecting the start of the race to be overcast for at least the opening 20 minutes, after which light rain will come on, and it will be light rain all the way to the very end of the race day. So therefore there is going to be a bit of a question mark about the transition onto the wet tyre at some point should the rain fall hard enough. Remember, we have timelines, however, to say there is going to be rain and it will be light. However, iRacing does have some control over the variability of that rain. It could be spotty at certain points. It could be consistent. The lightness as well. Light rain is a relatively range-defined term, so it could be very light drizzle through to be light proper rain, if you will, and we'll have to see just what it does on tyre strategy. But as we do see, Hockenheimring there turn himself into a bit of a rallycross machine and trying to make his way towards the rumble strip, of which there's only one active runway now at the Thruxton airfield, whereas it used to be two during the Second World War, but there is only one. It is used for private flights. Indeed, a very short run strip used for very small aircraft such as Cessnas, particularly trainer planes. But we do see Hockenheimring bring himself back on right now, and as he does so, well, the number 222 driver, they're getting a little bit wrong, but very easy mistake to make, to be fair, when you carry all that speed out of turn number 8, or also known as Church Bend. But still gets it right now as he gets himself back on the road, and he wants to iron out all those mistakes nice and early, so that way he doesn't make them again later on in the race, where mistakes are going to prove just that little bit more costly. But of course, John Roberts, the boosted motorsport driver, once again showing his prowess in the BMW M4 Evo, but it really has been a chalk and cheese season for John. And the fact that BMW has looked so quick all season, the problem he's had with it, and the same for his teammate Lee Berridge, is the fact that for every round where it's looking quick, there's a round afterwards where it's not looking as quick. And it's not because the BMW is necessarily struggling. It is a car that's very difficult to tame. Ever since the transition from the F82 to the G82, what has happened with the M4 is essentially it's gone from a car that is very flat and stable, and when we say flat, in terms it's not that exciting a car to drive, or it's exceptionally predictable, it has turned into a car that's a lot less predictable. Now, of course, that coincided with the physics engine and the time model updates to the GT4s, which is crazy to think that was almost a year ago now on iRacing when they did that, and it really brought the GT4 machines alive, and one day we hope to see even more GT4s out there. I mean, we wouldn't go amiss if we saw an Audi R8 GT4 arrive, I think, or indeed the likes of the Alpine A110, or some of the other machinery that's making its way into the racing world. But still, we do have plenty of GT4s on the simulator currently, and this BMW M4 Evo G82 is a very lively car at that now, and particularly that rear axle does weave and wind its way around for a front-engine rear drive car, and it's all about managing that weight transfer of this car that proves absolutely pivotal, because it's got a lot of pace on the straights, but it's in the corners where it's definitely nimble, but you've got to be able to make sure you're able to tame that aggression on the rear end. As Paul Goffin makes his way around in the very safe Porsche 718 GT4 Cayman, and this car, it is one of a limited number. There's mid-engine rear-wheel drive in the GT4 category on iRacing, the other one being the McLaren. Well, this is the car that's got all the speed in the corners. You drive it on the throttle, but once you tame it on the throttle, you can absolutely do some incredible lap times. And as we do see Paul Goffin make his way onwards, right now, all the pace there, no doubt about it. And we're just keeping it nicely together as the 164 driver weaves his way between the chicane. As he does so, a minute left to go, and well, definitely a bit of an advisory, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't gone to the bathroom and you definitely think you're going to need to at some point during the race. Alternatively, you're sat there right now thinking my glass of water or my glass of insert beverage name here is looking rather empty. Go top it up now. You've got approximately a minute to go before we do see ourselves to the grid. And with that, get ready to go racing for round number 6. And you won't want to miss a trick. You won't want to miss a beat of the racing here today at the Thruxton circuit, because it's going to be fast, it's going to be furious. And when you do have a grand total of 20 GT4s out there, well, it's definitely going to be a very exciting round of racing ahead. So we're going to heed our own advice. We're just going to go silent for a brief moment, and that's because we're going to take a big sip of water to make sure that we're all hydrated in preparation for an evening's epic action. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as we've now acquired our water, and we've definitely sipped plenty of it, and Daniel Osler comes towards the end of the warm-up session, as do all of our drivers. It's time to make our way to the grid. It's time for round number 6 of Season 8 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge, sponsored by Oris Digital and brought to you on iRacing. It's, of course, time for round number 6. And so as our drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for our 6th round of racing action. And it's going to be Stuart Reynolds who takes pole position for Fury Simsport, and will be joined on the front row of the grid by none other than Guy Edwards. The 6-term motorsport driver joining that front row once again, and showing he's got a lot of pace in that McLaren. When he's able to untap it, it definitely seems to be a machine that is almost able to catch Reynolds and match him lap for lap. But still, behind them, starting in 3rd place, Daniel Oster for Paddock Motorsport, and then he was a 10th for the time set by Guy Edwards, and a further 2 tenths away from Stuart Reynolds' pole lap. Nils Corr will join Oster on that second row of the grid. The satellite racing driver will be pleased to be there. However, he'll know then that Ford Mustang, he's got to save a lot of fuel, but if he can do so, he may just be able to try and steal away the podium, if not a chance to win. Matthias Temme, the Dutchman, starts 5th today for Fury Sim Sport, and I can confirm he is on the grid. He's not starting from the back of the grid or the pit lane, which is good to see. And then we do see Idris Abdillahi starting 6th there for satellite racing. Now, the French will be followed up by Stephen Codman, and this is where things are getting very interesting already. Now, we said about the fact there's the rain that's coming later on. Everybody's starting this race on slicks other than Stephen Codman, who's put the wet tyres on the car for Trackmouse Racing. So the pole sitter has taken a big gamble here because those wet tyres are going to get hot very quickly on a dry circuit. They'll be very abrasive to those tyres here at Thruxton at these high speeds, and he will struggle early on, and it will be whether he can get to the wet weather transition with those tyres in a relatively good condition. He'll be joined on that 4th row by his fellow Trackmouse Racing AM start in the 88 of Mark Johnson, so that's your top 2 in AM. Then we do see Rob Sharp and Lee Burridge continue the AM theme, starting 9th for Burris Racing and 10th for Boosted Motorsport. Behind them on what is row number 6, we will see Gary Toole for GST Motorsport, head of Ollie Carbadine for Rowanworthy, the term separated by almost 2 tenths. There was only a grand total of 7 thousandths to Martin Rendell starting 13th, the privateer, but we interrupt the AM train with a pro in the form of Dennis Van Beelen for Chicane Online Racing, and he'll be wondering where did the pace go in qualifying. From the Dutchman, it was then a further 100th to Paul Goffin for SRM, and Heinz Mann for Rowanworthy starting 16th place. South African driver in the end, 2 tenths behind Goffin, but I suspect to be a lot closer over the race distance. John Roberts starts 17th for Boosted Motorsport, ahead of Quatermass Motorsport's Andy Chell, and then we do see making up your final row of the grid, and we're all 20 drivers, Kim Such, Oris Racing, and Jules Gardner started 20th of 20 drivers in Racing Magazine with no lap time set, but he knows he can do things from the back there, and the professional photographer and sim racer definitely will be looking to try and make sure that he's going to snap at those places very quickly. But ladies and gentlemen, that is your rundown of the grid order. As we can see, the field has made its way into single file, and I suspect that does mean we are going to see the field make its way to green flag racing in single file formation as a result, given the fact they've been told they must go through the final chicane in single file order to make sure there's no contact between drivers. Well, that's definitely going to aid Stuart Reynolds a little bit with regards to if he can get a good start out the corner, he may be able to drop a few drivers before they get through the opening few bends. Well, that's wait to see. Of course, Guy Edwards will be ready to be very quick on the reaction times here. If he nails his reaction for 6-7 Motorsport, he may just be able to keep Reynolds very honest and make a potential move for the opening couple of bends. If he does not out, Reynolds may be able to make an early break on this one, and that's been one of his big tricks, which if he can get an early break, such as the Hockenheimring, he's normally able to stay clear and stay safe. But of course, all that's more we're about to find out, because they come into the final quarters. It's over to Stuart Reynolds to take the field away for 60 minutes of racing action in round number 6 of the championship here today at the Thruxton circuit in the United Kingdom. As he builds up the speed, it's go, go, go immediately for Stuart Reynolds as we're away for 60 minutes of racing action. Down towards turn 1 they go, and immediately Daniel Oster taking a cheeky peek up the inside as they roll the way to the corner. We show you the tyre compound on screen as well, so you've got an idea who's at what compound, and there you can see the proof that Stephen Codman is the only wet shod runner at this time. But into the brains over turns 2 and 3 and 4 they go. Matthias Temme right on the back of Idris Abdillahi, but your AM posted to right now, warming his wet tyres up, goes immediately very deep there to turn 2, and one only mistake there, but that's the wet compound offering him very little grip at the moment, and with all the heat of the tyre, he's going to fall down the order like a stone here, as once he's offline once, he's going to lose that trice. As meanwhile, Andy Chell's got around there in the rear of your picture, and Chell's had a big spin. We'll get an update on that very shortly as he gets the car turned around. Meanwhile, more fighting here going through Noble, and that's going to be Stephen Codman dropping down the field even further. But right now, he's got to try and protect those wet tyres for the best part of 20 minutes if he can, and if he can do so, he might be able to get the upper hand in this race, should the rain arrive as scheduled. But as we do see it, Roberts right now make his way forward in the rear of the picture, just passes Stephen Codman. Well, now he comes into focus, and we can see Heinz Mann looking for a peek up the inside there. Will Mayer be able to make it here coming through Church Bend? The answer is going to be not quite. He backs off there. That is going to bring Kim Such into the fight. Free wide they go, and as they do, Kim Such right in the middle of the pair. He's going to try and part the seas like Moses, although we don't have any rain on the road at the moment, otherwise it would be literally like Moses. Into the braking zone he goes, and Kim Such then doing a 2-for-1 special. Lovely bit of work, but carries too much speed, and the rear of the car goes completely loose from Club Bend, but he does not send it like a club into the wall, thankfully. He gets it away from the barrier, and is able to keep on racing without any damage, just some slightly bruised tyres. After one lap of racing, it's Stuart Reynolds who leads over in pro. Ahead of Guy Edwards and Daniel Osler. That's your top three. Then just behind is Nils Corr, followed by Matthias Temme. Idris Abdillahi, he sits in 6th currently, all over the back of Temme as they roar the way around. These two, of course, know each other very well. They've battled a plenty so far this season and plenty more to come. Mark Johnson is your AM leader in 7th place, ahead of Lee Berridge, followed by Rob Sharp, 1.2 seconds behind. And he's got Gary Tour and Ollie Carbadine chasing him all the way through to best of the rest, with Dennis Van Beelen, after starting in 14th place, up to 12th place and gradually making some progress. But he's bringing Goffin and Rendell and Roberts with him, and Stephen Codman continues to slip down the order, and Codman is really struggling right now on those wet tyres. I don't think this has been the right call for Codman. I can see what the gamble was, I can see what he's trying to do, but right now, unless the rain comes much earlier than anticipated, I think he's only going to hurt himself considerably. The only thing he can try to do here, of course, is save a lot of fuel as part of this strategy, and therefore essentially potentially turn himself into a one-stop. Alternatively, would be a two-stop, but while the pit stops is going to be very short by comparison. But meanwhile, through the chicane, that's contact between Nils Corr and Matthias Temme. There's going to be further contact there as both cars try to get it back together. Just missing the tyre barrier in the exit there was Nils Corr, and in the end, as they make the way to turn number 1, well, it's going to be side by side here coming through Allard Bend, and Temme on the inside, Corr on the outside, and it is going to be Matthias Temme who gets that place back. But Idris Abdillahi, he squeezes one past both of them and moves up into 4th place there. My goodness, that suddenly erupted. It definitely escalated very quickly. We need to get a replay of that, exactly what happened there very shortly, because that was not normally the way it goes between those two drivers. And I suspect a small mistake between one, a contact to the other, and then suddenly after that both cars unsettled. But as they make the way on around, a bit of a big slide there for what was none other than Idris Abdillahi, and now Matthias Temme trying to go around the outside here through Noble. He's going to make it work. So now get the inside going into Goodwood Bend at turn number 6, and behind you see Mark Johnson, Lee Berridge queue it up here, but this is causing a big split between the top 3 and the rest of the field. You're looking at 4th through to 7th place right now, all queued up together. In fact, through to 8th place. Let's correct ourselves, and this battle absolutely brilliant. But Rob Sharp, Gary Tour and Ollie Carbadine will be brought into the mix as well at this point in time. As at the front of the field, we can see there, Stuart Reynolds right now has slipped backwards, and he's going to swap place here with what will be Daniel Osler as the rain falls. So the rain comes earlier than expected, and well, this is a surprise, but right now, this is going to work out very nicely for Stephen Codman. So he thought rain was on the cards much sooner than planned, and when it has arrived, so suddenly now everyone who's on the slick tyre, they've got to try to hold on here and make sure they don't lose out versus the growing wetness of the circuit. They've got to try and keep pumping tyre temperature. Meanwhile, for Stephen Codman, he loses a place there to Heinz Mayer. But all he's got to do now is take it easy. If this circuit gets wet enough, those wet tyres will start to switch on by cooling down, essentially. And for Stephen Codman, this could be a piece of master strategy. This could launch him all the way to the very front of the field. Definitely an AM, but potentially overall here. We'll have to wait and see what Codman could do. But right now, that rain has come very soon. But as we do see D28100 saying, let's go, Paddock. Osler to win, or he's sacked in the morning. Well, I appreciate the banter there, and I do love it there, as Daniel Osler represents the Paddock Motorsport team today, with Daniel Perry not making it to the racing given personal circumstances, but the 314 driver here falling back a little bit off of Stuart Reynolds right now. Remember, running a Fury Simsport livery, because they are what is a sister team to Fury Simsport. They are racing under the banner of Paddock Motorsport for this season. But further back, Gary Tool chasing it after Rob Sharp as they make the way on towards Brooklands, and will that rain fall in, but it's light at the moment. It's not too significant. We're not seeing any spray build up off the back of the cars, as meanwhile Lee Berridge up the inside of Mark Johnson going for the lead of the AM class, and Berridge goes all on that inside line. Johnson in the end does not try to fight it, and well, the wipers are definitely on at this point, but no spray contrails on the back of the cars at the moment. Spray vortices, as we do have a slowdown penalty there for Idris Abdillahi for track limits going for the club chicane, and as he makes his way through turn number 1, a small little bit of spray there starting to come off of the curb. I think water is starting to settle a little bit, but it's very light, this rain at the moment, so we'll have to see what it does as well. Patrick says there, Chell is surely back in rain, and well, we'll have to wait and see when Chell will come into pit lanes. He's currently on the dry tyre. Steve Codman, of course, is the only wet tyre run at the moment, but if Andy Chell is thinking about it, as is Kim Such, you'd imagine they would immediately go to the wet tyre now, try and get it done early, as Kim Such does so, albeit he also has to burn a slowdown on pit entry, but that will be to go to the wet tyre, I suspect. So he comes down into pit lane, he gets the car stopped, and does the car go up onto the jacks? Well, we'll have to find out in due course. In fact, he misses his pit box, rolls back to it, and he goes up on the jacks there. So that confirms that Such is in to put the wet tyres on. So he goes early. Now remember, as he goes onto that wet tyre, the one thing he'll have to do when he comes out of the pit lane is get it turned on. And well, the circuit's not wet enough, you can get it switched on very quick, but if it doesn't go through its heating cycle properly, then what you do is essentially overheat the tyre before it starts to get any grip, and therefore you actually ruin the tyre life. Andy Chell and Jules Garner battling, and that's going to be Chell making a move there for 10th place in the AM class and 17th place overall. Stephen Codman still following, but Codman's lap times right now not improving too quickly. So the wet tyre still not optimal at the moment, so Codman's just waiting for that tyre to start to switch on. As meanwhile, coming out of the pit lane is going to be the Machineer Kim Such. I see him going out my concept booth window, and well, he falls a lap down already as Guy Edwards in control at the front, and Stuart Reynolds and Daniel Ostler behind. But how did we see the lead change hands, many of you will be wondering. We'll get a replay of that very shortly, plus also some other big moments of the racing as we do see these drivers heading up towards what will be Goodwood once more as they drop Daniel Ostler even more so. But Reynolds right now pushing on here and setting the fastest laps to race of 15.01. And something tells me that Stuart Reynolds right now would like to get that lead back if he can, because his game plan will now be to try and use pace to break away. As we start to see a little bit of spray appearing off the back of the cars coming down through Church, and that's a sign when the spray starts to appear, you're starting to head towards the point where the switch to the wet tyres might become a fault. And that spray just needs to get a little bit bigger, and then suddenly the wets will become optimals. It's a slow down penalty for track limits there for Guy Edwards. Reynolds goes around the outside. Does he get it stopped? He does. Does he get the move done? Yes, he does as well. Guy Edwards loses out there through the chicane as they go on to lap number 7, but neither one of them deflects to the pit lane. Now Lee Berridge, meanwhile, am leader at this time. You'll see that the rain is definitely building out there a bit more, and well, very poor run through the club chicane, and Mark Johnson all over the back of him like a bad rash as he now looks up the inside, and Johnson goes all in for the move here. Side by side they enter into the opening bend on lap 7. He'll get that place. Lovely move for Mark Johnson, and going up the hill towards what will be turn number 2. Will Johnson definitely right now doing everything right here as he defends that position hard, and Lee Berridge absolutely nailing that move there in terms of trying to come back at him, but Mark Johnson having the ample response to him, which was park it in the middle of the road, and in the end there's going to be no way through for Berridge, particularly as this circuit gets slipperier and slipperier. But Hines, man, he slips his way into the pit lane as well. Car up on the jacks there, being searched. We're seeing more yellow flags for drivers, and that will be for violations of track limits. It'll be automated slowdowns they're picking up as adjudged by the iRacing stewarding system, not by the Sim Racing Magazine stewarding team. And as all these drivers come through, well, right now more changes afoot there, no doubt about it, as Martin Rendell continues to chase after Paul Goffin, and we're still trying to find that 6th place in the AM class. And Goffin, of course, the driver who has taken up 1 win so far this season, ideally trying to make it another win where he can, but he's got a bit more work to do, no doubt about it, as they roll the way down the hill. As they come onwards, well, Rendell getting closer and closer as Stuart Reynolds is into pit lane as I look out my content booth window, and well, he's decided enough's enough as Dennis Van Beelen takes a look up the inside there versus Carwadine. That's not going to work. Carwadine goes very deep, Van Beelen goes deep with him, but I think now the circuit is getting into that window of it's time to transition to the wet tyre, and everyone's peeling in, but there's going to be a split here as many cars up on the jacks. But sunny for Stephen Codman, where's his pace going? His pace right now, his last lap, a 21.31 compared to the laps being set by the overall leaders at the moment, which are 19s and 20s on slick tyres. So I suspect it's going to be one more lap, and then Sunny, that wet tyre is going to be the right tyre to be on. That's the challenge right now. As John Roberts makes his way on around, we are missing someone around him. I suspect that's where essentially a driver's coming to the pit lane. So as a result, John Roberts in a bit of a lonely position at the moment as he makes his way on around. In fact, I think Roberts has had a bit of an error somewhere, although I can't put my finger on it, but we will get a replay of it very shortly. And so that's definitely not where John Roberts should be based on the pace he's been shown so far, as we understand it. But still, more pit stops coming out there for drivers. As we do see Nils Corr and Idris Abdillahi together, nose to tail. The two satellite racing drivers here, making sure not to make contact with one another. Of course, the number 1 rule of racing is to beat your teammate. The number 2 rule is don't take your teammates out whilst beating them. And well, Nils Corr right now getting ahead of Idris Abdillahi just about as Edwards is into the pit lane. I suspect Matthias Temme will be coming in just in front of the pair, and then we will be seeing as well Corr and Idris Abdillahi coming. If they don't, well, they're definitely brave for drivers, and in the end they do come in, but Matthias Temme goes another lap. He goes on to lap number 9. This is definitely pushing it right now. The lap times are slipping, and it's a 25.36 that previous lap as Andy Chell leaves the pit lane just behind him. I think Tem's gone 1 lap too long here. I think he needs to come in because he looks like he's struggling right now as he goes very deep there at turn number 2, getting in towards 3 and 4. And once you go deep at one of the corners, it completely ruins your line for the rest of them as the car slips and slides all over the road. And right now he's trying to keep it together as best as he possibly can. He's doing very well to do so as Matthias Temme, but even he has his limits. Stuart Reynolds, meanwhile, Makes his way towards the timeline, and as he does so, well, he's going to retake what we believe is the effective race lead, with Temme having to come into the pit lane soon to go on to what the wet tyre. And Mark Johnson, meanwhile, comes on around, but who's leaving the pit lane right now? There's Nils Corr, and Idris Abdillahi right behind him. Lee Berridge makes his way on out. Will Johnson jump Berridge? The answer is going to be no. They're going to be practically dead even here as they make their way up towards turn number 2, but in the end, Lee Berridge gets back ahead of Mark Johnson. So it's worked out in the favour of Lee Berridge going the extra lap. Mark Johnson went to the wet tyre sooner, so his tyres will be switched on. But meanwhile, Lee Berridge here nailing it by just going the right number of laps on the slick tyre by comparison. And just behind there is Gary Toole, and Rob Sharp's in the rear of the picture as it roll the way around. John Roberts, meanwhile, the reason we were getting confused is because we had seen Lee Berridge up towards the front of the field, and we thought then that John Roberts was Lee Berridge, essentially, just to fill you in on that one. And well, he is where he would be expected to be based on the pace he's shown so far, in 7th place in the AM class and 14th place overall. As he makes his way on around, well, Lee Berridge trying to chase after Idris Abdillahi, but look at Mark Johnson here looking for the move. He's got the tyres turned on, looking up the inside, coming down through Village, in towards Church, and right now, can he get it done here? He will. Mark Johnson takes that move up the inside, a lovely sweeping move, and that's going to move him into now his 2nd place in the AM class, but not before Berridge tries to come back at him here on the run up towards the club chicane. And well, Berridge is going to be on the outside, Johnson on the inside here, battle the brakes. Gary Toole watches on from behind, and Mark Johnson takes a very tight line there. Onto the brakes they both go. They converge, they swap stances, but in the end, Mark Johnson does enough to hold on as Gary Toole just rolls in behind. Guy Edwards, meanwhile, back into lead ahead of Stuart Reynolds. He's taking that move in towards turn 2. We'll get a replay of that very shortly, as well as some other big moments on the start of this race. As we can see, Matthias Temme comes out the pit lane. He comes out in amongst Gary Toole and also Lee Berridge. He comes out between the two AM drivers. So Temme has lost out considerably by going the extra lap. The one upside to this, of course, is the fact that by going deeper into the opening stint and sacrificing what is the race time, well, he may have been able to save a little bit of fuel in the process, and he may have a bit more strategic flexibility. Now, of course, given the way that strategy has typically played out in these races, we have seen 2-stop races be the key, and the first pit stop somewhere in the region of around about 20 to 25 minutes into the race, and then a second stop coming somewhere in the region of 40 to 50 minutes into the race in order to make sure you get to the end of the race unscathed on fuel capacity. But when it rains at a circuit, you use less fuel, understand, because you're not able to get the throttle down as often and for as long. And as we do see there, a bit of a slide from Matthias Temme, who collects the car together. Indeed, a bit of a well-caught slide that was, going through turn number 6. That's going to open up the door for Gary Toole. But more on strategy shortly, because here comes Lee Berridge. He's going to try and make it a double here as he goes around the outside of one. He tries to make it both. Looking for the move on Idris Abdillahi. Johnson being on the inside there, and Berridge right now braking as late as possible, but goes to turn in. Finds that Mark Johnson's able to match him for braking, but Johnson in the end can't find a way past. And Lee Berridge holds up the 2nd place now in the AM class. Takes over Mark Johnson. It is constantly back and forth between these two drivers, which is absolutely brilliant between them. But right now, Lee Berridge coming alive in these conditions. That BMW is definitely looking very happy in his hands right now. And well, Stephen Codman is 10 seconds up the road, and that gamble from Stephen Codman to start on the wet tyres has paid off very nicely for him. We thought it would put him towards the front of the field. It's put him all the way up to 4th place overall. But understanding for Steve Codman, he's now on a bit of a different strategy compared to the rest of the field, in the fact that, yes, he has taken track position at the front, but he will be the first now to come into the pits next for fuel, as we would understand it. And does that mean suddenly that his 2-stop now actually really puts him somewhere in the region of what is an offset versus the likes of Lee Berridge, Mark Johnson and Gary Toole? That's going to be intrigue. And for Codman, I think one of the biggest priorities has got to be now saving as much fuel as humanly possible. Or alternatively, he goes all in at this point and just simply pumps out the laps and makes sure he keeps opening the gap up to Berridge and Johnson to cover himself off. Because we don't know whether by not coming into the pits and starting the wet tyre, whether he's locked in on a 2-stop, whether the drivers who have pitted to potentially move themselves now onto a final stop of this race. It's all to be seen. But right now, Stephen Codman at least has moved himself all the way back to the front of the field. Matthias Temme back up the inside of Gary Toole. And well, that's going to be 9th place overall, taken there by Temme, who fell down the order after trying to stay a bit too long out on dry tyres. But now everyone's definitely on the wet tyre here as they make their way around. And Matthias Temme definitely still in control of his destiny, but he's got a bit more work to do. But as things do calm down for a little bit of time, although we see Gary Toole trying to come back here for a potential move, is it going to work out? The answer is going to be no. Coming in towards the right-hander Campbell. Well, we will now start to make our way back in time. Well, in fact, we were going to, but we won't, because John Roberts going a bit wide there, coming through Allard. He's going to give up a spot to Ollie Carbadine, and now we'll see Martin Rendell try to go outside to inside here onto the brakes, into Campbell. And, well, will he get it done before he gets to Corr? But the answer is yes. And Martin Rendell up into 8th place in the AM class now. Lovely move there. John Roberts making a small mistake, but doing very well to recover the car. And as we ride on board, with your boosted motorsport BMW M4 driver. Well, right now trying to get that power down, but the gap just opens up a little bit too much, and Roberts now has got an even bigger hill to climb as they make the way through Noble. But intriguingly, Rendell goes a bit wide there. I think he's just trying to find a faster line through the corner. Remember, the racing line isn't always the quickest line in the wet. It's the line where there's the least amount of water. And as more rain falls, particularly if this rain continues, we will start to see standing water form on this circuit. Although intriguingly around the Thruxton circuit, given the perimeter road here that we are racing around, this circuit does see the water flow off the circuit quite rapidly, so therefore it's very difficult for it to congregate. It will normally congregate on curbs like that coming out to Church Bend, as John Roberts gives you a visual demonstration, and well, the boosted motorsport drive almost going around there on the exit curb, and the curbs will become the danger zones in the end when the circuit gets wet enough. You also see it here for the club chicane. You'll see that the drivers will more and more try to avoid putting a wheel on the green runoff area, and instead the most they will do is dip the tyres up onto the raised curbing, but even so that will prove increasingly slippery. But we're going to slip our way back in time and find out exactly what happened at the start of the race and bring you some of the big moments from early on, including what was the race start itself. And this was when we did go green flag racing, and back then it was dry. The clouds were definitely coming over and the rain was on the horizon, but we didn't think it was coming that soon. So we went green flag racing, and for Stuart Reynolds it was a good start as all the field made its way in towards turn number 1. And as they all came through the opening quarters here, everyone's safely on away. But it went a bit wrong for Andy Chell as they made the way on towards the mid portion of the open lap as he came on through. Turns 2 and then 3, we're going through Cobb Bend, and the rear of the car just started to let go very slowly, and for Andy Chill it all came loose there. Just cold tyres, a little bit too much curb, and it all added up to be a bit of a disaster. But then for Kim Such, lap number 1 also beheld a bit of difficulty as he went for what was a big move in towards Club Chicane, and in the end the rear of the car completely came loose, carried too much speed and downshifted too aggressively, and the rear tyre spun up and went around. But he was not alone in that. Heinz Mayer as well making a big mistake, going on to lap number 2. And, well, as we did see the Roan-Worthy try and make his way for the opening bend, the rear of the car started to let go as he had the brakes on, tried to hold it, and in the end hit the barrier there with the rear of the car, the rear right, so I suspect the suspension may have been knocked slightly out of alignment there, but he did very well to try and contain that as much as possible. We then had this for Kim Such, as this was Such making a bit of an error on lap number 3, and as he went very wrong, well, exactly did go wrong. This was going through turn 3 into 4, and the rear of the car completely stepping loose. But we have to go back to lap number 2 to see how Guy Edwards passed Stuart Reynolds, and this was the first move made for the lead. And as they made the way through, it was Reynolds cutting the final chicane a little bit too aggressively, cutting the apex of turn 12, and that enabled Guy Edwards to take the lead off of him. Of course, they did swap back a little bit later on, where it was Stuart Reynolds taking over 6th place, and this was as the rain started to fall. Edwards went a bit wide, and in so Reynolds made sure that he capitalised on the slowdown that was in effect there for his rival, made his way up the rising towards club, and Stuart Reynolds took it back, and they continued this back and forth fighting all the way through to lap number 10, at which point we did see the lead go back to Stuart Reynolds once again. But there were some other big moments earlier on in the race, as well as everyone coming into the pits, given the difficulty, and well, we did get to see what was a bit of batting in the mid-pack, including this of Idris Abdillahi and Matthias Temme, whereby as they made the way onto start-finish stretch. Remember that Matthias Temme had gone the longest of everybody. Well, he made his way out. So there went Nils Corr, then went beating Idris Abdillahi, then Mark Johnson, and then we got to see what was Lee Berridge practically side by side here as he finally brought himself up to speed. But Berridge was able to sneak his way ahead or thereabouts, and it was Gary Toole in the end who had to sit in behind. But after that, we did have a bit of difficulty for a couple of drives, including this for John Roberts. And Roberts, who was looking very good, what exactly went wrong for him? This was on lap number 11. The rain definitely coming down. And, well, made his way out of Church Bend, went wide and onto the grass there. Did he bring it back on okay? He did, but also falling off the road there. That was Ollie Carbadine, and also Martin Rendell almost doing the same. So all these drivers definitely prone to making some small errors at the moment as we come back to live racing. And as we do, well, Gary Toole and Dennis Van Beelen fight each other. There's 20 minutes of this race complete. We've still got plenty of time to go. Van Beelen runs very wide there. Just about keeps two wheels on the road. I do not know how Van Beelen managed to hold that together, but a very impressive drive, no doubt about it, from the chicane online racing driver. And the GSD Motorsport machine, the 207er Gary Toole, tucking into tow here as they come down the hill in towards Church Bend. But for Van Beelen, definitely one of those moments where it was bum tensionally tight, and meanwhile he made his way through the corner, as I meant bum clenchingly tight there, amalgamating all my words to one. He went deep, and Gary Toole now looking for the return here as he'll get the run all the way out for Brooklands, and it's going to be Toole on the outside to inside line here. Meanwhile Van Beelen's going to try and cut it around the outside into the chicane, and that's not going to work. Gary Toole takes back 11th place, at least for now, although he does straighten out the chicane a bit too early. And that's getting a poor line coming on towards the start-finish line. And Van Beelen comes back again, and the Dutchman taking that 11th place back in the Ford Mustang. Well, back and forth between the two as we like it. And right now you can see the cornering capabilities of the Porsche, which does come into its own a little bit in these wet weather conditions versus the pure muscle of the Ford Mustang. But Van Beelen doing very well to tame the American muscle. And Gary Toole, meanwhile, just needs to be a little bit more precise if he wants to make the break. But speaking of making breaks away at the front of the field, well, Stuart Reynolds right now open up a bit of a lead to Guy Edwards in the tune of 2.5 seconds. And was working out very nicely for him at the moment as he gradually steps away. And well, that last lap from him was 3.5 seconds quicker than Edwards is. But Daniel Osler, by comparison, was 2 tenths quicker. So Osler right now on a bit of a mission, the Paddock Motorsport driver. And these are the conditions he absolutely loves. And of course, it was in these conditions where he did take the victory, his one and only win of the season at VIR back in round number 3 in March. And a very impressive drive there. And right now, Osler trying to make it another wet weather win. And what he did mention in the build-up to this round that he does fancy his chances in the wet weather conditions. The Porsche is very strong in them versus what is in the dry conditions. The Porsche not quite being up there. As Guy Edwards has picked up a slowdown penalty for track limits at the chicane. That being the club chicane, but he's burned that slowdown already by the time he gets to Campbell, and well, as a result now he won't have to worry about that anymore, but he does sacrifice some time to Osler. But meanwhile we come back to Mark Johnson still fighting with Lee Berridge as we ride on board with the Trackhouse Racing number 88 driver. Coming down in towards turns 2, 3 and 4, and we're making the way on through. And in fact, I can see they're being corrected. I'm getting Osler and Perry mixed up there. I do apologise. This is going to be a Murrayism day, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen. But hold the phone on that, as that's going to be Mark Johnson looking for the chuck up the inside. And the Trackhouse Racing driver there couldn't quite squeeze about the inside, and almost making it work, but unfortunately not quite. And well, the 88 driver there getting so tight in, as hold up a second, who's that rejoining? That's a slow going car. I believe that's Kim Such is rejoining. I'm taking a bit of a trip to the grass. And well, double check my notes there, and D28 100% correct there in the fact that win at VIR going to the Paddock Motorsport car of Daniel Perry, not Daniel Osler. And thank you for correcting me there. And indeed, it was a great win for him. And Daniel Osler right now trying to make it 2 wins this season for Paddock Motorsport. And as we did say earlier, the Porsche definitely very comfortable in the wet, if you will. However, it still needs to be hounded by its driver to make some magic happen. But meanwhile, as the rain stops and it does come back, well, Lee Berridge right now trying to look for a move on Nils Corr under braking. Be out the inside. Berridge goes all in, and Nils then can't turn in. He finds a face of a BMW on his inside line. And well, that is going to be the change there. There's a big slide loose of both cars. They're both trying to fight for traction here as much as they're fighting each other. And Berridge does take that move for now. As we look back from the rear of the number 41 BMW. And the Boosted Motorsport car still having a lot of wheel spin there coming out of turn number 1. And well, the traction control will be on. I don't know if they're allowed to tweak the traction control set in the car. Something tells me they may not be allowed to. The only thing they are allowed to tweak is the brake bar, so I remember correctly. And therefore, with these fixed setups, it does mean they need to drive these cars quite on the limit. As we can see Mark Johnson taking a cheeky peek up the inside there of Nils Corr. Johnson's starting to get a little bit quicker, but also aided by the fact these two fighting is always going to naturally bring him into the realm of getting involved in the fight. Coming through the left hand at turn number 5. Right now, Lee Berridge definitely trying to keep it together as much as possible as they roll the way around. But as we can see, it's going to be Corr who gets the quicker run coming down through Goodwood. But now, the time they get to Church Bend, there's no way in. He just has to sit there as they make the way up towards turn number 8. As they do, looking further back, Ollie Carwadine, he's on the back of Paul Goffin at the moment. John Roberts, meanwhile, has been involved in an incident which has sent him a bit further down the order. We will get a replay of that very shortly, but Carwadine still trying to catch up. As Matthias Temme, meanwhile, has had a bit of a trip off the road coming out the final corner, but he's kept it together. There he is. So Temme right now still trying to get himself settled in these wet conditions. And well, he's looking safe, at least for 9th place at the moment, but where he wants to be is not where he currently is. Meanwhile, Carwadine peels to the inside, gets ready to go onto the brakes, coming up towards turn number 10. He'll be too wide here under braking. Can he get it done? And the runway drive goes all in for the sweeping entry. And in the end, a lovely move there from Ollie Carwadine. And Paul Goffin stays the outside, but Carwadine does fluff it a little bit in the fact that he has cut over the curb at turn number 12 too much. And suddenly he'll pick up a slowdown, but Goffin does the same on corner exit at turn number 12. So both drivers have time-limit slowdowns there. And well, they will burn them as quickly as they can. And Carwadine will confirm that move. And well, you could say it was overtaken on off-circuit, but then again, Goffin fell off-circuit as well, so it all balances out between them. Now, Carwadine has 3 seconds to close down to try and catch up to Gary Toole. And, well, first he's got to make his way past Jules Gardner and put a lap on him. And the 20th place runner just in front at the moment. But as we do see Gilles stepping aside there, obeying the blue flags, very aware of them. And well done to number 27 driver for that. Not easy to do in the dry, let alone the wet here at Thruxton. So right now he's really doing a delicate balancing act. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Stuart Reynolds is not pulling away. The gap, in fact, is coming down. It has come down now to what is 1.2 seconds, and more the lap times are getting a little bit quicker. Now, one thing that is noticeable is the fact that this circuit has seen the rain stop. Now, the rain is no longer coming down, at least at the moment. But the flip side of the coin is, of course, the rain could come back, and if it does so, well, it will definitely be keeping things interesting as we top the circuit up. And again, we had very overcast cloud into light rain scheduled, and well, the rain came the best part of about 50 minutes earlier than anticipated, and then again, it has stopped now, so we'll have to wait and see what that exactly means for the rest of the racing, but definitely introducing a lot of intrigue as he tries to carry on their journey around the Hampshire circuit. Well, right now, Stuart Reynolds at least maintain that gap. In fact, opens it up a little bit more. It's that sideways Idris Abdillahi, and that's coming out of Cambo into Cobb. And by the time he gets back to speed in Seagrave, he's dropped down to 8th place. In fact, that's going to be down to 9th as Matthias Temme squeezes up the inside. There's a big error, it would seem, for the satellite racing driver. And Mornay drops a long way down the order. But was that an error of his own volition, or was he aided in his journey? We'll find out very shortly as he tries to get himself back together. But meanwhile, driver Kim Sarch, he's turned around there. And that's Campbell into Cobb. So it's all gone round for your driver in number 29. And, well, he falls further down on being a lap down already. This race right now definitely proving to be a little bit of a challenging one for him. But meanwhile, Matthias Temme gets himself back up to speed behind Idris Abdillahi. Well, behind him is Idris Abdillahi, who's trying to go back on the recovery drive now. And we'll say roar the way up the hill. We take a look back at exactly what happened to Idris Abdillahi only moments ago. Or do we? Well, we're not going to cut away. I don't think we are right now in case the move happens. Not quite. And then Idris Abdillahi snaking in behind under braking versus Temme. And we wouldn't want to cut away. Just a minute overtake is about to occur. But I think we are going to be safe for a brief moment. And here we go for a view of what happened to the satellite racing driver. So going through turn number 2 in towards 3. Turn 2 looked okay, so he transitions into the left-hander, and the rear of the car just slowly let go, much like we saw for Andy Chell earlier on today, and that's what sent him around. We had a similar incident, I believe, for Kim Such then. Such made his way through turns 2 into 3, took a lot of curb at 2, went into turn number 3, and in the end, the rear of the car just simply saying no. Pretty much an identical spin, but the difference was for him, he went all the way round. And then we had this a bit earlier on for John Roberts. A bit of drama for the boosted motorsport driver at exactly the same corner. So it seems as though the transition from turn 2 into 3 catching out so many cars, and it's not just Mercedes, and John Roberts having the infamous slow spin as well. So mistakes being made, and well, with that, we won't make the mistake of missing out too much racing action as we come back to your live racing. As we do, mistakes for some drivers proving very costly, but Stuart Reynolds right now not letting the cost of earlier mistakes hold him back as he continues to lead here going on to lap 22. A bit further back, we do see Mark Johnson try and look for a move on Nils Corr. He wants to get through here. He wants to clear the pro driver so that way he can hunt down the top 2 in AM. However, things at least right now not coming his way, and Corr proving to be a little bit of space between what is Johnson and Berridge. Further back, Temme and Abdillahi together. And still Idris Abdillahi trying to catch up, but he has picked up a slowdown penalty for track limits at the club chicane. Well, that's going to cause the gap to open up from 6 tenths to approximately around 9 tenths, if our guess is correct, as the sun's definitely coming out. But the circuit will not be drying up that quickly, although we will potentially start to see a bit of a dry line forming in about, if it continues like this, in about 10 to 15 minutes time. But will that mean there'll be time to go onto the slick tyre at the very end of the race? Probably not, I suspect, unless we really do have a lot of sunlight and it does heat the circuit up dramatically at this point, but we will see. But right now, at least, wet tyres are going to be the tyres to go to. But I wouldn't be surprised if a driver further down the order potentially throws in a strategic gamble towards the very end. It's always worth doing it if you've got nothing to lose, whereas if you've got everything to lose, chances of what Stephen Codman has at the moment, well, then you won't want to go for that gamble whatsoever. Remember, he is the only driver who started the race on the wet tyre. As the rain does start to come back again, well, I think the thought of slick tyres is definitely going out the window with a small drizzle as they made the way out of what was at Church Bend. And well, Stephen Codman right now has got Lee Berridge go for the move, and Berridge all over the back of him, launches up the inside. Does Berridge get it stopped in time? He does. And for Lee Berridge, well, I don't know where that's come from, but Berridge absolutely flying onto the back of Stephen Codman, and that's because Codman's got to come into the pit lane. Codman has just been able to get to the midway point of the race, and well, for Stephen Codman, this is going to be a one-stop strategy. This could be brilliant for Track Mouse Racing right now. Codman goes up onto the jacks. They will probably put on a fresh set of wet tyres as well to give him the most comfortable car possible. But Codman may be able to pull off the one-stop strategy here, and if he does so, this will be huge. Now, everyone else will be aware of that, and Lee Berridge, I think, is going to be reminded of the fact now that Codman did not start the race on the dry tyre, and therefore everybody out there has likely got to make a second pit stop at least for fuel. Codman's out of the pit lane, 22 seconds stationary. That means all four tyres most likely have been changed. A whole new set of wets have gone on, plus all the fuel he needs to get to the end of the race, but he will have to fuel save to do it. But if Codman can pull this off, it will be a monster win. And well, the last time we saw a one-stop strategy play out, well, that was at Motorsport Arena Oschersleben in round number 5 of Season 7 of the GT4 Challenge. It worked out with the drivers who committed to it there, and here today, we could theoretically see a one-stop strategy win at least the AM race, and well, depending on the gaps, could it even earn a driver an overall podium? Well, we'll have to wait and find out, as Stuart Reynolds has the approaching presence, I should say. I think I was trying to say encroaching initially, but it was meant to be approaching, of none other than Guy Edwards. And as Edwards looks at the potential move, they're coming in towards turn number 2. It's not coming, but Edwards right now definitely the more comfortable driver as he continues that pursuit. But going from right to left and in towards right now, the number 7 driver bounced his way over the curbs. And with the 6-7 at Motorsport McLaren looking very happy here, although that gap does open up for a brief moment. And then again, I think right now it's the difference of 2 drives, 2 cars, and we're the most comfortable on the lap. You see those puddles of water when we ride on board. This really gives you an idea of the places they need to avoid versus the places they can definitely touch. Not easy whatsoever as they roll the way through. Still a lot more work to be done between these drivers, as Stuart Reynolds taking a much wider line there coming through turn number 7 by comparison. And the Guy Edwards very tight, but he feels as though that inside line is the safer line and perhaps also the quicker line. But 2 drivers with 2 very different cars, and well, how they gain the lap time is what really makes the difference. He gets the better run going all the way out through Brooklands in towards the club chicane, but he's too far back here to look for a theoretical move. But that definitely goes to show you right now that Guy Edwards is on a mission. Lee Berridge, he's got Nils Corr behind him, and Corr is starting to get a little bit closer. Mark Johnson also still onto the back of this. And well, as they make their way through turn number 8, I wonder what Mark Johnson's doing right now. I wonder if he's going into a full fuel saving mode here in order to potentially be able to out-strategize Lee Berridge, because Berridge has proven to be the quicker driver, at least on fresher tyres, and when he can absolutely go all in for it. But then again, strategy is such a key part of the story here in any race in the GT4 Challenge, let alone when you have rain at Thruxton. But Johnson goes a bit sideways. Nils Corr gets it closer as he powers away onwards. Johnson into the pit lane, so he decides to call his pit stop just a little bit early. And meanwhile, Nils Corr on the inside of Berridge, and well, this could be good timing from Johnson, because what he's done now is he's got himself out of the synchronised order of being in this battle. So, as we do see these 2 drivers fighting away towards turn number 2. Corr on the inside, Berridge on the outside, but remember, it will now switch back into a left-hander, so Berridge will have the inside line, and then coming up towards Seagrave, he'll be on the outside here, and will Corr be able to get the move done? Not quite takes the curb, although to be fair to Berridge, he does find a puddle of water on the outside, he just about avoids it, and Lee Berridge hold on, but remember, all this fighting is going to cost them a huge amount of time, as we look back from the rear of the number 41. And Lee Berridge may be the AM leader on the road at the moment, but understandably, he may not be the lead driver in terms of AM strategy. So that's what we'll have to see how it all filters out. But further back, have we got any other battles going on at the moment? Not quite so, although Stuart Reynolds and Guy Edwards are getting closer together again for the lead. But this is a very important battle here, not just for a top 5 overall finish for AM Drives versus the Pro, but also for what could be the AM win, as Guy Edwards goes up the inside as Stuart Reynolds into turn 1. But Reynolds is going to come back here. It's a switchback move from Stuart Reynolds. He saw it coming and thought, right, I'll wait to carry the pace up towards Cobb. And onto the brakes he goes here. And in the end, it's going to be Guy Edwards losing out for another moment. But he's definitely trying to push this as much as possible as they roll the way through. And we're coming in towards turn number 4 right now. Well, Guy Edwards still in second place. But now Reynolds has to go defensive into Noble. And as the rain comes on down, this will top up the circuit. And that will seemingly favour the McLaren just a little bit more. But he's going to have to go all the way round. Is he going to be able to hold it to an inside line coming in towards Goodwood? The answer is no. But Edwards definitely poking, probing, looking every which way for this potential move. And the 6-7 Motorsport driver once again on a very tight line here coming down the hill from turn number 6 in towards 8. And will that tight line really enable him to close up there? And Reynolds right now, the outside line, he's not finding the traction he wants, as into the pit lane comes Gary Toole and Martin Rendell. So the fuel tank's right now running low, but it is a quick pit stop for them just to put fuel in the car. And we'll Guy Edwards closing gradually here. Will he look for the move in towards turn number 10? He gets closer and closer. 2 attempts now as they get towards the braking zone, but he's not close enough. He decides to lift off there and just save some fuel instead and make sure he perfects his line. But what a battle this is right now. And with Daniel Osler 6 seconds behind, not really closing up at the moment. And the Paddock Motorsport driver has got some more work to do, as into the pit lane comes on the lead of the race. Stuart Reynolds and Guy Edwards with him, and they all come in. I suspect the fuel tanks have gone as far as they can. So this will be the second pit stop. So where is Stephen Codman going to come into all this? Well, I doubt he's going to be making his way ahead of the leaders at the moment. So this will be a very quick splash and dash of fuel then, based on what we have seen thus far. Although saying that, we'll have to see how it is actually going to play out in practice. And well, as we have Nils Corr going on to what is another lap. Lee Berridge comes on through as well. Berridge is still going. Matthias Temme comes on through. So does Idris Abdillahi, and Stuart Reynolds, he comes back out in 5th place. He makes way out with Guy Edwards right behind. Daniel Osler's going to be a bit further back, as Rob Sharp, meanwhile, goes on to another lap. The second place AM driver, at least on the road, as Van Beelen, Osler and Carl Wadena all into the pit lane. Goodness me, this is getting very strategically confusing at the moment, but that's what happens. We have drivers on different strategies, and that's what we do love to see. But as we do have Carl Wadena in pit road, where is Stephen Codman? Here he is. So Codman will get ahead of Ollie Carl Wadena. Mark Johnson has taken his second pit stop, so that means that Johnson has jumped back ahead of Codman, but Codman does have the fresher tyres on the car as we understand it. So it's Johnson, to be fair. We're just trying to read between the lines of the data here, ladies and gentlemen. Bear with us, but it does seem as like, at least for now, Stephen Codman, well, he's most likely committing to a 1-stop. Mark Johnson, well, he has just completed that second pit stop, of course. You'd expect he's going to get to the end. And we'll Paul Goffin and Rob Sharp have yet to take a pit stop, and Lee Berridge has yet to take that final pit stop. So that's where the intrigue will be. But we are waiting for those pit stops to come through. John Roberts, of course, leaves the pit lane now. And as he does so, he comes back out in 16th place, or 9th in AM, and making his way onwards here. Well, the number 86 driver picking up the speed, but he's got plenty of clear track to him. Gary Toole, meanwhile, has had a bit of an incident. We'll give you an update on that shortly, because in the pit lane, we've got more pit stops. We've got Nils Corr in, and we've got Idris Abdillahi in, and Lee Berridge. So this will be the critical part. There's Berridge. We look to the blimp camera. Where is Johnson? Here he is, making his way right now all the way out towards the club chicane. He's quite far back, to be fair. I don't know if Johnson's going to jump ahead of him or not. The same with Codman. Berridge is starting to leave the pit lane. So is Nils Corr. It's going to be close between these two as we do look back down to the circuit side cameras. Corr's already out of the pit lane. Where's Berridge? There he is. Where's Johnson? There is Johnson, and Johnson's going to come out behind. So Lee Berridge is the effective AM lead on strategy right now, and Stephen Codman has lost out as well. But remember, Codman is on a one-stop strategy here, and that one-stop strategy actually may be just as much his vice as it will be his virtue here today, in the fact that now he's got to really preserve the fuel because he had to pit after 32 minutes of the race, whereas meanwhile the rest of the field now has taken their second pit stop, having already thrown fuel into the car, in having to go from the slick tyre to the wet tyre. Well, they've revised it and worked the strategy out alternatively, as that's been Codman getting it slightly wrong. And going through turn number 3 into 4, getting on from Cobb in towards Seagrave, and Codman there was a small mistake, but that mistake could prove costly at this point. He's going to lose Johnson and Berridge. He could be at risk of potentially seeing Rob Sharp come out close to him. Well, that's Andy Shell sits in front at the moment, almost lap down on Stephen Codman, but he'd be grateful there not to have a lap put on him, at least for now, and the blue flags will stay away for a little bit longer. For goodness me, how this all chopping and changing on strategy. And Matthias Temme, remember, he's still got to take his second pit stop if he is going to take one, which we believe he is. Stuart Reynolds and Guy Edwards have already made that pit stop, and Rob Sharp is now into the pits. So he comes on down. It's going to be a quick stop here, most likely for the Iberis racing driver. And, well, where is Stephen Codman? Here he is making his way up through Brooklands and in towards the braking zone 4 club. So right now at least, Codman we think may just pit Rob Sharp, but given the difficulties he's had and the pace he's showing, Sharp may be very close to on pit exit. Well, there's Sharp starting to leave the pit lane. He's got a bit of a journey to do. Stephen Codman, meanwhile, go round the outside as he goes around the outside of Andy Chell as well. And it's practically even here. So in the end, Rob Sharp comes out just literally on the heels there of Stephen Codman. So this has not worked out at all for Codman. It was genius initially starting on the wet tyre, but because it's forced him onto a one-stop strategy effectively, this has actually hurt him more than it's helped him. Because the rain came so early, what it's actually done to this race is it has turned the race into what is a reverse two-stop, where we've seen essentially the opening stint had to be a very short one, but meanwhile, change overall, because that is going to be Stuart Reynolds taking the overall lead on circuit and strategy, with Matthias Temme, his teammate, yet to come into the pit lane. He can go longer, given the fact, of course, that he did opt to go the longest of everybody on the slick tyre by an extra lap, and well, he'll be pitting into the pit lane. He's out of fuel in that car now for Fury Simsport, but that buys Guy Edwards just a little bit of room to the tune of 2 seconds. But remember, in these conditions, Guy Edwards has typically been the quicker driver, although that time around he definitely wasn't by 8 tenths. We'll have to wait and see what it's going to be in the next couple of laps and whether Edwards can bring that gap back down. Stuart Reynolds right now is definitely giving himself some breathing room, but we believe this is to go all the way to the end of the race right now in terms of the strategy. They won't be expected to make any more pit stops as Matthias Temme, he comes out of the pit lane and through going long. Well, he's going to come out right in amongst Nils Corr, Lee Berridge and Mark Johnson again. He'll come out right on the coattails of them, and well, there you can see so Mark Johnson. So Temme has regained some of the time he lost, but it has not quite worked out to give him some clear track. And he immediately looks up the inside. They're coming into Campbell versus Johnson. Now going into Cobb here. He's going to be on the outside and on what is it, relatively cooled down tyres. We'll try and force his way out the inside in towards Seagrave. But Mark Johnson slams the door shut in his face and says, no, you don't. I've got a battle to make for the win in the AM class. So Stephen Codman right now not close to this group at all. And Codman's pace not matching Lee Berridge or Mark Johnson whatsoever. So I think Codman right now is in a game of survival for third place versus Rob Sharp. Ollie Coverdine is 8 seconds behind, so won't be getting involved too soon in this one, but definitely all the strategies now coming to fruition, and Rob Sharp knows he's got a bit of work to do here if he wants to get in the hunt. He's right on board the Iberis Racing 68 for the Scottish driver, and well, that 4th win of the season may be a little bit too far away today, but he's definitely got the sniff of the podium there if he wants it to come his way. Going down the hill and in towards Church Bend once again. The Porsche drive right now, not in the best of lines there, in fact losing time, but we're going to lose the feed from him for a brief moment because we come back to Temme and Johnson. Matthias Temme on the inside and Mark Hill letting this go. I think the game plan is to essentially wait for Temme now to catch up to Lee Berridge, although Berridge has got Nils Corr for company to try and work with. So at this point it's going to come down to how the pros play out versus the AMs in this leading group. Well, for Mark Johnson, I think a second place he'll be happy with, but part of him will be kicking and screaming. He wants that second win of the season if he can. Alternatively, Lee Berridge is going to become a new winner in the AM class today. I'll just double check my notes to make sure I'm not getting the names of the winners wrong, and I do apologise for some of the incorrect bits of information given out today, ladies and gentlemen. We promise you it's not the fake news channel here in this broadcast, but indeed sometimes we even do get it wrong. But indeed, it's been 3 wins to Rob Sharp in the AM class, 1 to Paul Goffin, 1 to Mark Johnson, and will Johnson become a 2-time winner today, or will Lee Berridge become a 1-time winner and become the 4th name to take an AM win? We've also seen a very similar story in the overall wins, of course, with Stuart Reynolds taking the 3 wins, 1 win for Dan Perry. That was in the wet at VIR, not Daniel Osler, as we accidentally said earlier on. Matias Penttilä was your winner only 2 rounds ago, and that being his absolutely infamous win at none other than Mount Panorama. We'll have to see what is to come next. But as these drivers weave and wind their way on through, well, that's a big run wide there. That is going to be Temme getting it wrong. And Mark Johnson will come past immediately, and Temme recovers. He's still on the grass. How the car snaking one way, then it snakes the other. And in the end, will be Idris Abdillahi. He will take that place off of him. So unfortunately for Matthias Temme, that time it's an error he can't recover from. And I suspect with how wet the grass is now, the car being pulled around and simply having to try and keep the power down to make sure the rear of the car does not slide loose anymore. But meanwhile, coming to Martin Rendell on the back of Paul Goffin. So this is a battle for 7th place in the AM class. And with 15 minutes left to go, well, if they come through the corner, Goffin right now holding his line. Martin Rendell, meanwhile, on that inside line. That's not going to work out a treat as he powers his way up the hill. But staying tucked into the toe right now and getting ready for that braking zone. Well, is there going to be a change? But the answer seems to be no. But very quickly, let's take a look at what exactly happened to Matthias Temme, because that was definitely a huge moment for him. And well, this was the on-board from the Fury Simsport 312 as he came through Church Corner. Carried the speed in, started to understeer a little bit, had to correct the car, and then rolled wide. Oh my goodness, the car went round, went completely 360 degrees. And in the end, just about kept it away from the barrier. Well done to Matthias for that. That was definitely a hairy and scary moment, and was able to make sure the car did not end up in the barrier in pieces. We had this for Paul Goffin. And this was Goffin making his way on through. I do believe the run of Noble here based on the camera angle. Indeed, that was at Noble Bend, and he went in on a wide line, and the SRM car went wide, went wider, understeered to the grass, and that explains how Martin Rendell was able to catch up. But now that Goffin's got himself back up to speed, he's broken away once more. So for Goffin, at least, it's all looking to be back under control. But back to your live racing we go, ladies and gentlemen, as we do. Well, this race could still give us a few surprises, although right now, this is not a surprise in the fact that Stuart Reynolds is leading, and leading by 4.8 seconds. He's opened up that gap to Guy Edwards. Perhaps the biggest surprise, in fact, in that is that Guy Edwards is no longer matching Reynolds for lap time. If anything, the lap times now have suddenly swung massively in the favour of the Fury Simsport Tri, the defending champion. And Guy Edwards, meanwhile, coming roaring around through turn number 6 in the 6M Motorsport McLaren, still trying to give up the fight, but at the same time, he's definitely finding himself right now being forced to retrospectively think, is this going to work? 22.7 seconds behind him is Daniel Osler, who is driving a very good and solid race of third place at the moment. Although he's got to be aware of the fact that Nils Corr is not too far behind. There he is, and bringing Lee Berridge and Mark Johnson along for the ride. And we are wondering whether there will be one more pit stop for anybody here. We're not expecting it. We are expecting everyone has done their stops, whereby this has been a two-stop strategy for everybody other than Stephen Codman. And Codman, of course, the man who started on the wet tyre, seemed to have it all in hand, but unfortunately it didn't quite work out the way it wanted to be for him. And the Trackmaster Racing driver right now still keeping Rob Sharp just away from it this time, but Rob Sharp is matched him for lap time, lap after lap. And that'll be the worry there for Trackmouse Racing. The number 5 driver, no, he can't exactly break clear. But meanwhile, battle for the lead of the AM class, Sunny Ignite. And that's going to be Mark Johnson trying to go around the outside to get the inside of the club. And he'll do so there versus Lee Berridge. So the lead swaps hands in AM, but not without running very deep there at the club chicane. Just about keeps you in track limits as Mark Johnson. And Lee Berridge now tucks in behind. But how exactly did that move get made? Well, here's a quick replay to explain. Now, we suspect there might have been a bit of an error for Lee Berridge. There was. He went wide at Church Bend, had to catch the car. He didn't pick up a slowdown for it, but he definitely drove into a big puddle of water on that exit curb, and by doing so, lost the best part of around about 6 miles an hour on the run up the straight, and that's what saw the place change there. So, a bit of an opportunity being seized by Mark Johnson, and Lee Berridge with a small error, but big potential consequences if he can't find his way back into that fight at the very end. But we come back to your live racing as we ride on board the dashboard here of the number 41, the boosted motorsport car. Well, this gives you an idea how restricted the vision is, particularly when there's so much spray coming up over the cars in front. Remember, he's got the double spray of Nils Corr in the distance and Mark Johnson as the closest car, his proxy. And we're coming through 10 and 6 down towards 7 and 8 at the moment. Well, Berridge at this point, it's just as much about muscle memory as it is about being able to see where your markers are. So the number 41 boosted motorsport driver here doing an incredible job of staying close. But indeed, as Mark Johnson there struggles to make his way through the corner, well, Berridge is going to get an absolute monster run here, but can he find the pace? Can he find a way to make the move for that 5th place or victory? Here we go in towards that braking zone, and in the end, Mark Johnson holds inside. Oh, and he hits the rear. That's contact to Corr, and Corr goes straight on, and Johnson in the end goes with him. So a big error under braking for Mark Johnson, and Lee Berridge, well, the third try in the sequence, will take the lead to the AM class. I don't believe it. Nils Corr's had to tow to the pit lane. Mark Johnson right now is trying to get the car into the pit lane, and I think it was a small mistake under braking there. Johnson just blindsided by the spray, and then broke too late, and the car sliding into the back of Corr. But Lee Berridge, when in the end he was the third car in the sequence, he made sure to stay back from it. And this has worked out very nicely for him. In fact, he now takes the AM lead, and with an advantage, or the best part of 11 seconds to Stephen Codman. Well, right now, Lee Berridge could be on course to become a 4th AM winner of the season. And with it, a huge injection of points could come his way. And Stephen Codman, meanwhile, well, right now in that 7th place, 2nd place in the AM class, is starting to pull away from Rob Sharp. However, his times versus Lee Berridge, they are not looking favourable. Lee Berridge, the last lap was 4 tenths faster. We'll now have to see what Berridge does in clear air. That'll give us the best indicator with 10.5 minutes left to go. But what exactly happened there between Mark Johnson and Nils Corr? Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's show you as we do go back in time. So this was the run all the way they made the way up towards the club chicane. But as they did, well, Mark Johnson here initially, of course, getting the better run. And as he did so, make his way on through. This was on lap number 34 into the braking zone. He went. So I think we've got a bit of footage from a previous move being made here rather than the most recent incident. But then we did have the big incident later on. And what exactly happened? Well, here it was. This was Nils Corr, Mark Johnson altercation. And it was. They made the way into that braking zone. We can see Lee Berridge very close to the back of Mark Johnson. Nils Corr went onto the brakes. Johnson went in even later and just clipped the rear of Nils Corr's car. And there was no way back after that. Here we take a further look back at the incident from the rear of Nils Corr's car and satellite racing driver as he went into that braking zone. You'll see the headlights of Johnson. Berridge looks to the inside, and Johnson in the end, in his haste to outbrake Lee Berridge, and then broke too late. And for Nils Corr, it all ended up in pieces. A gutting moment for him, but unfortunately nothing that could be done. And understandably, well, that will probably go to the stewards afterwards. I'm sure that Mark and Nils will have a chat about it, and no malice meant there by Mark Johnson. You can see what he had to do in the end. He realised too late that he was going to miss his brake marker after being threatened by Lee Berridge. He tried to pull the car to the right, but in the wet conditions, the water on the road, the car wasn't going to jinx to the right quickly enough, and unfortunately hitting Nils Corr on the back, and Corr has had to tow to the pits due to the collapse of the rear suspension of the car. Mark Johnson, meanwhile, was able to drive into the pit lane, so he's back out there with a fast repair, having made a third pit stop, and he's put some fuel in the car as well, which gave him a little bit of a momentum boost here. But right now, down to 5th place in the AM class. He's got 5 seconds to close up to Ollie Carwadine, so he could still, in theory, be chasing down a podium here in the AM class, because after Carwadine, it's Rob Sharp, who's only 4 seconds further up the road. His first task is going to be Dennis Van Beelen to pass, but for Johnson right now, there'll definitely be a cloud hanging over his race, and it's not the rain clouds, I can tell you that. But as he carries on, and Patrick's saying that unlucky for Nils Corr, and 100% agree with you there, Patrick. Very unlucky incident between them, and well, I'm sure they'll talk about it. And that's the great thing about the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge, or indeed any event or series held here at Sim Racing Magazine. We'll come back to that thought shortly. As Gary Toole, where's he going? Well, he's made his way very wide there coming out of turn number 8, and I suspect that's taken a bit too much exit curb, and the car being propelled. But as he brings it back on, careful, and as he does so, well, in the end, he comes back onto the road. Paul Goffin just about avoids him, and Andy Chell unlaps himself for a brief moment. I think Andy's going to be wondering there, as is Paul, where on earth did Gary come from? And the answer is he came from the field on the inside and managed to get the car back together. But how exactly did he end up going out so far wide? As Toole makes way into the pit lane, here's a quick replay to explain. So this was coming down through Church Bend, and as he made his way onwards, different camera angle here, you can see he touched the exit curbing, and as he made his way back into the tarmac, the left-hand side tyres hit a massive puddle of water, and the car completely got thrown to the infield grass. But thankfully, no barrier there, just plenty of grass, and was able to gradually bring himself back onto the road. Well, no, not without perhaps scaring Paul Goffin a little bit, as I think Goffin did have to put the brakes on for a brief moment. But that was that, and now back to your live racing we go. But as we do, Dennis Van Beelen's gone wide there, and that is going to be, I do believe, Goodwood Bend at turn number 6. So Van Beelen making a mistake, so Mark Johnson up into 10th place. Well, this could become a reality here for Mark Johnson, chasing down Ollie Carwadine. That last lap, he was able to find 3 attempts, and then we'll have to wait and see what he can do. Of course, with a couple of drivers coming in, we did have Gary Toole come in, and that was for a quick stop. Will we see? In fact, Gary Toole has got out the car, so an issue with the car perhaps after that error. And well, as a result, Gary Toole will be out this race, ladies and gentlemen, from what we understand. And well, that's going to be our first official retirement from this race. Although Nils Corr's car is still being looked at in the pit lane. I'm not sure if they're going to get it back out there, however, so it might be 2 retirements in a very short period of time. Meanwhile, small mistake from Stuart Reynolds coming out of Church Bend. Our leader right now, making an error, but not too grand of an error from what we hear in our ear. There he is on the road right now, and trying to make it a 4th win this season. As meanwhile, Heinz Mayer's definitely had some difficulty. There's Mayer. That's on the inside of Nobles. He's going to tow to the pit lane. So what exactly has happened to Heinz Mayer? Well, here's a quick replay to explain. So this was Man making his way on around, coming through Seagrave. Car slid loose a little bit, but to be fair, looked okay. Count behind Jules. God knows, going slowly. And I think Man thought that Jules was going a bit quicker than he was and hit him on the rear in the end. And well, I think Garner was just trying to make sure that he stayed out of the way of everybody. But Heinz Mayer in the end couldn't predict what was going on. And unfortunately, hit the rear of him. And well, definitely a big incident between the two of them. And something tells me they'll have a chat about that one after the race as well. With 5.5 minutes to go. And well, not too long left, but now will anybody have to make a last minute pit stop for fuel, or has everybody got the fuel they need to get to the very end? Remember, of course, Stephen Codman on what is a one-stop strategy to everybody else's two-stop. And well, I don't think he's got the fuel to really push after Lee Berridge, and his lap times right now indicate that. In fact, he is lapping 1.4 seconds slower than Berridge, but understandably at the same time. Bringing home the second place will be huge for Trackmouse Racing, as it will be a 7th place overall as well. Some big points going to them. And for Stephen Codman, given the fact he gambled start on the wets, whilst it won't be the win, he'll definitely feel as though the gamble played off as best it possibly could. Although understandably, it is a gamble that cost him the win of the race. But again, just wait and see, because we've had some last minute drama in races this season, and right now, well, there's a question mark on the fuel tanks for all the two stoppers, given the fact their first pit stop was to put the tyres on and also to put some fuel in the car. Well, that pit stop occurred at approximately what was 10 minutes into the race. Their second pit stop occurred with around 25 minutes left in the race, so the fuel tanks right now are definitely going to be looking close to empty, but given the way drivers have been able to fuel save over the course of the season so far, we suspect they should be okay. But as Berridge, your AM leader on screen, makes his way up towards Club Bend, right now he doesn't need to push himself too hard. All he needs to do is stay out of trouble for this lap, plus what is expected to be another 3, and then he will see victory in the AM class. He'll become the 4th AM winner in what will be 6 rounds of racing, and well, it'll be a very happy day for him. Given the way it's been ups and downs this season for the Boosted Motorsport driver, this will definitely feel like a huge high after starting 4th in the AM class, 10th overall, and 4th place overall with that win. Well, it'll definitely be a huge haul of points for him. Then Idris Abdillahi just behind, with Matthias Temme gradually closing on him. We could expect a battle between these two for 5th place right at the very end of the race if all goes the way that Temme wants it to. Idris Abdillahi trying to get the hammer down here to make sure it doesn't go that way. And we do have confirmation that we have lost Heinz Mayer, Gary Toole and Nils Corr from this race. So in a very short period of time, we've gone from 20 runners down to 17. But the wet weather conditions here definitely proving to be challenging for the drivers, as Idris Abdillahi taking a lot of curb there at Noble. But in the end, managing to keep the car pointed in the right direction just about. And we're getting a bit brave with the curbs there. I don't think we'll want to repeat it too soon, as Temme is definitely getting within attacking distance. Gap now is 9 tenths midway through this lap. I suspect on the next lap, Temme might be starting already to look for a potential move, and on the final lap, he'll definitely be itching for the move. But further down the order, Mark Johnson still chasing after Ollie Carwadine. Gap 1.3 seconds at the moment as he tries to close the gap. And well, Carwadine is only within 1.4 seconds of Rob Sharp. Sharp right now seems to be struggling a bit here, and I wonder whether that's potentially fuel needing to be saved for the Burris racing driver. As I do see Carwadine going a bit wider, Johnson going even wider than that. They are pushing themselves to the limit here. As our leader, meanwhile, of Stuart Reynolds, here he comes through what will be Goodwood. So he's got this lap plus potentially 2 more. We'll have to wait and see what the time says when he crosses the line. Will we get 42 laps or just 40? Well, will we get 42 or 43 today? It is going to be close, as Carwadine picks up a slowdown coming out of club. Well, he's going to serve that quickly because Mark Johnson's going to be with him very shortly. So Johnson right now is going to go on the attack as we ride on board with the Aston Martin driver for Trackmouse Racing. And we're coming up towards what will be Campbell, Cobb and Seagrave. Well, that triple complex there, he's going to brake as late as possible, but a bit too adventurous there. And well, by going that deep, that's actually going to cost him a lot of time. That's not the way we wanted it to go at all. Now, our leader just crossed the timeline, so we are going to get 43 laps, unless suddenly there's a call made by the stewarding booth. But it does seem as though we're getting 1 more lap than we predicted. And so Mark Johnson is going to get this lap plus another 2 to give it a go. Unless, of course, your race leader is able to lap them, but I don't think Stuart Reynolds is going to get close enough to do that as he rolls through. Stuart Reynolds then, well, right now, no opposition in front of him. He's coming up to a pack of AM drivers, however. Then he'll be looking to try and put a lap on, so he's going to be a bit careful around here. That's Martin Rendell just in front, who's trying to put a lap on Andy Chell. He does so. Chell steps aside, going in towards Noble Bend. And right now, for Martin Rendell, well, just keeping himself out of trouble, 7th place in the AM class, definitely is finding him very comfortably. But from him, we come back to Rob Sharp. who again coming out to Church Bend, losing a lot of time, and Carwadine here almost in attacking distance now. Into the braking zone they go. Remember, these three drivers, we should say, they've got 2 more laps to go as Carwadine gets so close coming out the corner. And on towards turn 1 they go, and the Aburris Racing Drive trying to hold on for the final spot on the AM podium. And well, right now, the bigger threat, is it Ollie Carwadine or is it Mark Johnson? Can Sharp get the two of them to fight each other rather than him? Well, that's more we'll have to wait and see as he heads up towards Campbell once again. Onto the brakes he goes, and well, at least right now, Carwadine looking increasingly threatening. No way in, at least this time, as our final lap does get underway for our leaders. Look at my content booth window, so 43 laps will be the allowance we get. But right now for Sharp, he'll now know he's got this lap plus 1 more to hold on. Carwadine looking to the inside in towards Noble. That's not going to work there. Just trying to threaten, but on such a tight line, he wouldn't be able to get it stopped in time. Sharp knew that. That's why he did not be perturbed. Here comes Mark Johnson, suddenly picking up the pace there, coming from Nowhere to Goodwood. And Johnson only needs 1 sniff of this. Oh, and he slides a little bit loose, and he understeers inside of Carwadine. It sends Carwadine sideways. And well, as he brings it back together, he backs off there to make sure he doesn't gain by a quote-unquote push to pass. Carwadine's therefore allowed to hold the outside. Johnson slips back in behind. Respectful racing there from Johnson. And was the car just understeered away? Well, Ollie Carwadine in the end almost went completely around, but managed to get the car controlled there. And well, on the limit, it didn't work out for Johnson. There'll be 1 more lap to see who's going to push whose buttons 1 more time. Meanwhile, Matthias Temme has found his way past Ben. Idris Abdillahi making a move. And I do believe Idris Abdillahi making a mistake at turn number 1. And that's why we've suddenly seen Temme jump up into 5th place. But meanwhile, as they continue onwards, well, it's going to be 1 more lap for them shortly, as meanwhile for Stuart Reynolds, it is going to be all about now what is the last couple of quarters. And what a day this has been today for Stuart Reynolds. Took pole position by 2.5 attempts, but looked under major pressure from Guy Edwards all the way throughout the opening half an hour. But something clicked after the second pit stop, and for Stuart Reynolds, the defending champion, it is going to be a 4th win of the season for him at Fury Sim Sport. What a drive. Reynolds wins in the wet here at Thruxton, and then 8.5 seconds behind it will be Guy Edwards, who brings home the runner-up spot on the podium for 6-7 Motorsport. Didn't quite have all the pace all the way through to the end to challenge Reynolds, but challenged him early on, and it will be 23 seconds before we do get to this man. And whilst it may not be a pair of teammates on the grid today for Paddock Motorsport, in the absence of Daniel Perry, Daniel Osler in the end is going to make sure that they do see the podium for Paddock Motorsport. What a drive from Daniel Osler, taking that 3rd place in the 3-1-4, and it'll be 8 seconds back to this man, Lee Berridge. And well, he is now going to become the 4th AM driver to take a win this season. And well, he adds his name to the list. He takes his first AM win, 4th place overall, just ahead of Matthias Temme, takes 5th, and it'll be Idris Abdillahi in 6th place with Stephen Codman. He gambled with the wet tyres at the start. It worked out, although he lost the lead to the AM class, but in the end he's been able to make the one-stop strategy work out for him. He takes the run-up spot for Track Mouse Racing ahead of Rob Sharp, who fends off Ollie Carwadine, and Mark Johnson, who completes your top 10, and well, that'll be your top 5 in AM as well. It's going to be 10 seconds back here to Dennis Van Beelen crossing line in 11th place. And then we will see Paul Goffin very shortly coming on through in 12th place at the end, albeit between him and the finish line it will be Jules Gardner, and also there none other what will be the machinery of Kim Such as they come to line. Jules holding on to 10th place there in the AM class ahead of Such, and then we will see Goffin coming on through there, taking 6th place in the AM class, 12th overall. And then we've got Martin Rendell, he's going to come on home here, he makes his way into pit lakes, he will be your last lead lap finisher. And Andy Chills already finished his race, he'll take 15th, and John Roberts will take 14th, just ahead of him in the end, as the intermingling of those a lap down all plays out as well. But goodness me, ladies and gentlemen, what a race here. And well, the English circuit definitely delivering, the fastest circuit in the UK, proving to be one of the trickiest circuits in the UK as well, the wet weather. And what a race all the way from start to finish. And for Lee Berridge, well, he's going to be absolutely ecstatic about that when he gets out the car. And the number 41 driver, after what was a very difficult day in the office at the Hockenheimring, definitely under a lot of scrutiny, him and Boosted Motorsport for what happened in the opening couple of laps in Germany. Well, here today, absolutely nailed it on. It was a back and forth fight between himself and Mark Johnson, and also Stephen Codman, but in the end, Lee Berridge was the one who kept his cool under the pressure and got the job done to become the 4th and winner this season, and a maiden win for him. But as all tries calm and cool on down, and indeed the rain stops for a brief moment, but it continues to come and go, as we see there. Ollie Carbadine with 4th place. That podium still beckoning for him, but he didn't quite have it today. Almost making the move, but unfortunately that contact between himself and Mark Johnson just resetting his pace a little bit. But the road-worthy driver will still be pleased to be finishing inside the AM top 5 and 9th overall. Well, let's take a look at those race results, ladies and gentlemen, subject to Eddie Stewart's inquiries. And as we can see, after an absolutely epic 60 minutes of racing action for round number 6 of Season 8 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge, brought to you on iRacing, sponsored by Oris Digital, Stuart Reynolds took the win in the end in the number 1, and the defending champion sees that championship crown come to him little by little, as the Fury Sim Sport driver took the win by 8.5 seconds. Second place, it was Guy Edwards of 6-7 Motorsport, who, as we mentioned, had the pace in the opening half of the race to change Reynolds, but after the second pit stop, the pace seemed to slip away, and the McLaren driver had to settle for the run-up spot. Still, he was comfortably clear of Paddock Motorsport's Daniel Oster, who had a very impressive opening 30 minutes of the race, but as time went on, the pace seemed to slide away as well, and he had to settle for the final spot on the podium. In 4th, Lee Berridge there, your AM class winner for Boosted Motorsport, and a brilliant drive there to be one shy of the overall podium. That's going to be some big points for him and the team in the overall championships, and well, he takes his first and win of the season, the BMW, ahead of the Mercedes of Matthias Temme, and the Fury Sim Sport driver in the end able to get the upper hand on Idris Abdillahi. And Temme making a habit of going the longest of everybody on the slick tyre, and well, that translated into longer stints for the first and the second stint, albeit in the end only able to find that 5th place. But to be fair, surviving those slick tyres, you could say in some respects really showed his ability to be very consistent in the changeable conditions. A late mistake for what was Idris Abdillahi on the last few laps at the turn 1 corner, saw what was your Frenchman fall down to 6th place, unfortunately for Satellite Racing, and then he was ahead of Stephen Codman by 16 seconds, the runner-up in the AM class today. But the one-stop strategy, whilst it was a gamble, it was a gamble that worked out in some respects, but not in others. The Trackmaster Racing driver in the end ahead of Rob Sharp by only a second at the finish line, and the Abrus Racing Machine holding off Ollie Carbadine for the final spot of the AM podium, also for 8th. Rome Worthy's driver in 9th place, and it was only a first second back to Mark Johnson in 10th for Trackmaster Racing. 11th went the way of Dennis Van Beelen, best of rest of chicane online racing, not having the day he wanted today here in the wet weather conditions, and Paul Goffin at 12th place there for SRM. Here is your last lead lap finisher. It was a lap down to Martin Rendell and also to John Roberts, and the Boosted Motorsport drivers then followed up 2 laps down by Quatermass Motorsport's Andy Chell, who we say hello to there in the YouTube chat, who says that was tough, cooked the wets chasing Hines and couldn't get them back, and we was definitely pushing hard there, and in the end it all went wrong for Hines Mayer, who did retire for the race, but between Mayer and was Andy Chell, we saw Jules Gardner and Kim Such. Hines Mayer, of course, in that contact with the rear of Jules Gardner's Sim Racing Magazine car, and in the end we did get to see what was an 18th place finish there for the Rome Worthy driver Hines Mayer. I do believe he will be classified as a finisher because he did complete over 75% of the race distance. And the same for Gary Toole, who did retire for GST Motorsport, and Nils Corr, who unfortunately involved in that contact with Mark Johnson into the club chicane, when he will be 20 if he was a non-finisher. But I do believe the Satellite Racing driver will still be classified as having finished the race given the distance he covered. But those are the overall finishing positions for our 20 drivers. What about in the AM class, meanwhile? Given the fact we do have the AM class championship and points are paid specifically for the AM finishing positions. And Lee Berridge, your winner today, the 4th AM winner of the season, and the Boosted Motorsport driver, almost 20 seconds ahead of Stephen Codman, and the Trackmaster Racing driver in the end gambled at the start in the wet. It put him on the one-stop strategy, he completed the strategy, but he did gamble away the victory in the process. Still, he was ahead of Rob Sharp by only 1.2 seconds at the finish line, with the Abreu Racing driver not having the pace to chase down the winners, but at the same time as well was looking consistent, but under increasing pressure at the end from Ollie Carbadine and also the relegated Mark Johnson after his contact with Nils Corr. But Johnson unfortunately not quite able to make the move on Carbadine after their slight touch going through Goodwood in towards what was the run of Village, and we made sure not to take the place there, and Carbadine was allowed to take the 4th, and the Rome Worthy driver holding off the Trackmaster Racing car by only 6 tenths of the finish line. Paul Goffin took 6th there for SRM. He was the last lead lap finish in the AM class, and he was a lap down for Martin Rendell and also there John Roberts, and behind the Boosted Motorsport driver was 2 laps down to Andy Chell and Jules Gardner and Kim Such, and behind the Oris Racing driver who was best of the rest, it was 12th place for Hines Mayer having non-finished the race, and also Gary Toole there for GSD Motorsports retiring with 8 laps to go. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's a rundown of the results subject to any Stuart's inquiries. And with that, our racing is complete, but this broadcast is not, because coming up in approximately 5 minutes' time, we'll be back for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. And I'm certain they've got plenty to say today, not just about the Thruxton circuit and how much they enjoyed qualifying at it, but also how they enjoyed the challenge of taking it on, both in the dry and also in the soggy conditions that prevailed, especially after only 7 minutes of racing action. So without further ado, we're not going to waste any time. We'll be back very shortly for our post-round interviews, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go away. You won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time to kick off our post-round interviews. And who else could we kick off with than another than our fourth AM winner of the season? Because joining me now in the interview room is none other than your AM winner for today, Boosted Motorsports, Lee Berridge. Lee, good evening to you. What a drive for yourself. You become our fourth AM winner of the season. You must be absolutely ecstatic about it.
Oh, mate, hi, first of all. I'm absolutely ecstatic with that. I really wasn't sure about tonight because this track, there's no visual reference points, and I'd not practiced following other cars with the spray. So how I pulled that off, I do not know. Yeah, I'm absolutely blown away by that.
Oh, you have every right to be. Particularly, like you say, this is not an easy circuit to learn in the dry, let alone in the wet when you've got so much spray and the limitations of practice as well. I mean, it shows how you've so quickly adapted to the conditions here. Now, I'm just jumping into this, of course. Qualifying, dry conditions. We saw you take 10th overall, 4th in class. Were you happy with your qualifying lap?
Do you know what? Yes, I was. That was actually the fastest time I'd put in above practice. I just happened to... You really lose out a lot of speed on that last right-hand fast corner down the hill. And I absolutely railed it and gained a lot of time there. So, yeah, I was pleased with that time. I knew I was behind Mark. I don't know what it is. I just seem to be electric on the starts with this car. And I got Rob Sharp quite early on and then just chased Mark down.
Now, in terms of the starter race, of course, we did see only one driver think about starting with a wet tyre, and that was none other than Stephen Codman. Everyone else, yourself included, went with the slicks. Was that always the plan, or were you perhaps 50-50? Should I start on wet? Should I go with slick tyres, given the fact rain was going to come?
Do you know what? It's easy to sit here and say in hindsight that, you know, absolutely I would have gone with the slicks. I thought about it. The problem is that in practice, the switch over between the slick to the wet, it was quite quick, this race, but ordinarily you can transition quite slowly and keep that slick going. So no, I wasn't ever going to go with the wet off the start, and obviously Ollie showed that was the wrong idea. But you know, got to be in it. It was a brave move. Got to try it. Might have paid off, and we might have been sitting here with him as the winner.
Oh, it did. Didn't quite work out for Steve, but it worked out very nicely yourself, a comfortable strategy. And in terms of then how the race develops, of course, like you say, you had a lightning start, moved your way up the order, and then really chasing after Mark Johnson. And we saw the two of you going back and forth, and then the rain arrived. What dictated when you came in?
Mark going in the lap ahead of me. And then I heard the spotter say the leader pitted, and I thought, that's it, I'm going in. I thought about going one lap longer, but just in that one lap difference, the grip just fell off the cliff. I had no front end, and I just knew that this was the lap I had to come in. I don't think, I mean, you'll tell me otherwise, I don't think anybody else went another lap, did they?
We did have Matthias Temme go an extra lap. He went the longest of everybody on the slick tyre, although it did cost him a bit of time. So it was no other AM driver, we can confirm that.
Okay, oh, that's good. I mean, I have to say, I'm a bit sad for Mark. He was on my backside that whole race. He was really pushing me, and obviously I made a mistake. He got past. I was able to stay with him. It was just really sad to see that him and was it Nils, I think, had come in together. That was a shame, but yeah, I'm over the moon with my win. I'm going to take that.
Oh, you have every right to be fair. And on your back and forth battle with Mark Johnson, I mean, the two of you are absolutely incredible, whether it was in the dry or in the wet. We saw you back and forth. One driver would make a mistake, the other would jump on it. But you just looked that little bit more comfortable, whether you were the lead car or the pursuing car in the wet. Did you feel it at the time? Or was it one of those you're driving for dear life here and just trying to hold on to a chance of a win?
I don't want to come across as cocky, but no, I had so much confidence in the car. I've said it before with you that the back end of this car seems to communicate to me so much better than the Mustang did. So, and it's very easy to get the back end out on this car. But I was just able to keep it under control, short shift it. So yeah, when obviously Mark went past me, I was able to stay with him, and it was just a case of don't lose the slipstream, don't let him get too far ahead and get comfortable. Keep him thinking about what's behind him, and you know, I'm sad that it affected his race, but you know, Got to be in it.
Oh, indeed. You could say you psyched him into a bit of an error, and unfortunately it went wrong for Mark with Nils Corr as well, but it all worked out for yourself, and in the closing stages, you looked absolutely unstoppable. Were you counting down the laps to see that checkered flag?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. I was getting caught by 5th and 6th quite quickly. And with that rain transitioning, it was coming, it was going. And yeah, I was a bit nervous towards the end. Those last 4 laps, I would say, I was really starting to get a bit sweaty. But do you know what? There was a moment where I thought I could genuinely be on for a podium, an overall podium. But no, towards the end, the tyres just started going off, and it was more about bringing it home than keep pushing on and make a mistake.
Well, you definitely brought home a huge result. 4th place overall, winning class, a massive injection in points in your championship campaigns. We've got 2 rounds to go, and next up, of course, is the Green Hell. Are you looking forward to it?
No, because at the moment I'm currently working, and I think I'm working both last rounds. But let me see what I can do. I do love the Green Hell, so I'll see if I can get that day off.
Well, we'd definitely love to see if you can get the day off, as we do see a message there in the YouTube chat from your teammate John Roberts saying woo and win for Boosted. So he's very happy. And well, I suspect the team will be very happy. But for yourself, I mean, we'd be happy to see you at the Nordschleife in 2 weeks' time. But just as we do get ready to let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to on the broadcast, Lee?
Well, again, thanks to you guys. You know, everything you do, this whole series, everybody that's involved, you know who you are. You do such a fantastic job. This is a really good series. And, you know, I very rarely come away with a sort of sour taste in my mouth. And I think finally just, yeah, thanks to John. Great teammate, always supportive. And, yeah, good fun.
Well, Lee, it's been great fun seeing you achieve your first win of the season today, and to have you in the interview room to discuss it afterwards. Congratulations once again. We'll leave you to it. Go celebrate that win. Have a lovely rest of your evening, and hopefully we'll catch you on the grid in round number 7.
Thanks, Paul. I'm going to go and do a rain dance that it rains at the Nürburgring now.
Enjoy. So hearing there from Lee Berridge, ladies and gentlemen, and well, lovely character, he is no doubt about it, and well, great to hear how happy he is in taking his first AM win of the season. Although I think that rain dance at the Nordschleife may not be heralding any rain, given the fact I think we are going to be making sure it's a drier day at the Green Hell, but you never know, to be fair, what could be in store. But staying in the here and now, the boosted motorsport driver definitely enjoying himself out there today, and talking out the fact in the end having to really acclimatise to the change of the Thruxton circuit, and one of the key parts being about it, the fact no real brake markers, no visual markers, having to do everything through muscle memory, and when the spray came with the rain, making it just a bit harder, but he adapted so well to it, and remind us when we previously talked to him about the rear end of the BMW, the communication that he has with the rear axle of this car, really helping him out, keeping control, and that's where he's able to be so quick. Mentioned the fact it was a bit unfortunate what happened to Mark Johnson when he pressured him into that area going in towards Club, and Johnson collected the rear Nils Corr's car. But as he said, you've got to be in it to win it, and that's exactly what Lee Berridge was doing, attacking hard every step of the way. But a brilliant battle between the pair, and I don't think it's quite over yet in terms of their fighting, although it would be very unfortunate if we don't get to see Lee on the grid for the Nordschleife in round number 7. But hopefully he's able to get the time off of work, and if so, we'll get to see him up there battling once again, because he may be on course for a late spurt with regards to points finishes in the AM Class Championship, and could he suddenly become a kingmaker, if not try to make himself his own king of the AM Class before the season is said and done. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got more interviews to come. Coming up next, well, we're going to be making our way to the Pro Class, but to whom, you'll have to wait and see. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we come on to our second interviewee, and now joining me in the interview room is our runner-up from today. It is none other than Guy Edwards. Guy, good evening to you, and what a drive for yourself today, looking rapid in that McLaren, especially in qualifying in the first half of the race. Are you happy with that second place finish?
Hi, Paul. Yeah, can't complain. So, as you say, I think in the dry, seemed to have quite good pace. Not too far. Couldn't quite match Stuart. I mean, you know, he was doing his usual up the front there. But I was feeling comfortable with the pace. That was the main thing. So I was like, you know, I didn't feel I was risking or hammering it. So I thought, actually, compared to the last round, I'd have a better chance of sticking with Stuart in the stints rather than, especially with the single file start, meant I couldn't do my last week and kind of be caught napping and lose 4 places before I get to the first corner. So yeah, that made it a bit fun.
Well, a lot of fun to be had out there, and we saw you take the early provisional pole position in qualifying, but then lose out with 2 attempts right towards the very end of qualifying. I get the feeling how you're probably looking more towards the rain's going to come at some point, so that 2 attempts is going to be meaningless.
Yeah, to be honest, in quality, I was just like, I want to see if I can put it up there. So I wasn't really thinking too much about the race. I kind of knew as long as I was at the front, that'd be fine. It didn't really matter, but I still, you still want it. And so I gave myself a shot with the last stint. I kind of changed onto some new rubber halfway through, once the fuel had gone down. So then kind of sacrificed the last 5 minutes just to get the new tyres up to temp. And then it was looking all right. And then I just basically didn't quite make it through the last chicane, pushing too hard. And I think you probably saw, ended off in the barrier. But yeah, gave it my best shot.
Well, you gave it everything qualifying. And then in the race, a bit of an interesting one because, of course, we did have the rain coming around 7 to 8 minutes in rather than 20 minutes. And always a bit of variability in the forecasted and the timeline weather in iRacing. Were you caught by surprise with regards to when the rain did arrive?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm guessing everyone did, unless there were some guys really studying the weather forecast and kind of managed to, put 2 and 2 together. So yeah, it was a bit of a surprise. I was expecting it to be, end of the first stint, pretty naturally the rain would come. So actually everyone would do their first stint. The rain would pretty much come around about there, and therefore it'd be fairly straightforward from a strategy point of view. So then when I saw some drops come on, I was like, hang on, what's going on here? So yeah, that definitely mixed it up. And then I think at that point, it was what you do, because it's kind of all about, you don't want to have an extra stop if you can avoid it. Equally, you lose quite a lot of time if you stay out on slicks and it's too wet. The time you lose doing that, might offset the fact that you have to do another splash and dash towards the end. So it was just push it, which is probably, I think I stayed out a lap longer than Stuart. So I stayed out just to see if I could push it as far as I could, so that I had a better chance of just making sure I didn't have to do an extra stop.
Oh, I see. And appreciate the strategic breakdown there. And one of the things I really do want to go into a little bit, what happened with the pace? Because after the stop where you initially went to the wet tyres, you seemed to be the quicker driver versus Stuart. But then after the pit stop to take on what I suspect was the fuel to get you to the end of the race, the pace went the other way.
Yeah, I think it was 2 things. I think I seemed to have a bit more pace than Stuart when it was drier. So the rain, I don't know if you could see it on the broadcast, but it got heavier and then it lightened up a bit and the track kind of got drier and wetter. So as it got a bit drier and a bit greasier, I think I had a bit more pace than the Merc and Stuart. And that's where I think you probably saw me close up. And then when it got wet again, that's kind of when I dropped back. So I think my pace was in the sort of drier, greasier conditions, and then Stuart I think in the last hit he just romped off. Also, I didn't change the wets, so I just stuck with the same set because I didn't want to risk the warm up, getting them back up to temps because they take a few laps, and so I just didn't want to risk that, and I just kept it steady. So that might have had something to do with the last stint as well.
Oh, fair play. So it's great to see the two of you chopping back and forth and how the pace evolved, and really appreciate your thoughts there, because like you say, you did seem to be the quicker drive. When the sun came out for a little bit and the circuit did start to dry up, but still, as we got towards the end of the race, looked quite comfortable for that second place, and you've been making a bit of a habit of really surprising us with these charges for the podium over the last couple of rounds. I mean, have you found some hidden time in the McLaren perhaps, or is this just a mid-season burst?
I think I just found more time. I just have got a bit more time to get used to the car, to be honest, and focus on that. And I think the last couple of rounds, a few things clicked in terms of driving style and the McLaren. So I think that's really probably made the difference. And once that clicked, it just made it a bit easier to find the pace and kind of get it to the top. But yeah, it's really nice to be up there. Really pleased with second. I think, as you say, second was kind of fairly, I don't want to say comfortable, but the gap behind was fairly substantial. So it was just more a case once I saw Stuart rumping off, kind of last probably 5-6 laps, it was just really a case of making sure you don't make. It's so easy to make a mistake, and around here, if you make a mistake, you've got about 10 acres of grass that'll happily take you on your merry way in the wrong direction, and take you about 10 minutes on a picnic to get back to the track. So it's just making sure you keep it on the black stuff and get around.
Oh, 100%. And well, I can tell you one thing, a couple of drivers did end up having a bit of a picnic, but not yourself. But speaking of grass which you can't have a picnic on, 2 weeks' time, we're making our way to the Nordschleife. How are you feeling for the Green Hell?
If I knew which way went left and which way went right, I'd probably feel all right about it. So I got a bit of work before then.
Oh, what a fair play. Well, definitely a bit of work to be put in there, a bit of practice, but we wish you all the best with that endeavour. And just before I do let you go, Guy, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to on the broadcast?
Just thanks to everyone at SRM. They put on a great show. It's really enjoyable to be part of it. It's a great bunch of guys kind of organising and everyone else racing. So and thanks to yourself. And yeah, just congrats to Stuart. It was a really good race. You know, he really didn't put a foot wrong, really. So many congrats.
Well, I definitely think Stuart will appreciate the shout out from yourself. And Guy, we've massively appreciated having you join me in the interview this evening. Congratulations on a brilliant drive to second place. Not quite the win, but I'm sure it's going to come one day if you keep pushing at it. But until then, enjoy the podium result, and we'll see you at the Nordschleife in 2 weeks' time to see whether you can go one step further.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Yep. And catch you all in 2 weeks. Take it easy. Cheers.
You too. Have a good evening. So hearing that, ladies and gentlemen, from Guy Edwards, the 6M Motorsport driver, very happy with his performance today and, well, looking upwards, no doubt about it. I mentioned there in qualifying that he did have some more pace. He did feel as though there was more time to be pushed for, but made a bit of a mistake coming through the chicane and completely spoiled the lap. But at the same time as well, he was on the front row, and after that, well, stayed with Stuart Reynolds all the way through the opening half an hour, and really breaking it down to the fact the rain surprised him, as it did, I suspect, most drivers he mentioned, but also the fact when the circuit did dry up a little bit, after the initial heavy spell of rain, with that brief spell of sunshine for 5 minutes, well, suddenly the 6M Motorsport McLaren started to fly, and Guy Edwards seemed to be more comfortable. But when the rain came back, going into the final stint, that's where we saw the circuit get a bit more wet, and as a result, Stuart Reynolds was able to just gradually pull away. But for Guy Edwards, make sure to keep it on the black stuff, bring home a major result. He's definitely finding more time in the car as the season has gone on, and what's absolutely looking brilliant for him now, as with only 2 rounds to go. Well, he may not be quite a championship contender among the likes of other drivers, but he's definitely on course potentially to try and see if he can wrap up the season with a top 3 in the championship, and I wouldn't blame him right now if he's definitely feeling the itch to become a one-time winner at least, with 2 rounds to go. But speaking of which, of things to go, ladies and gentlemen, we've got at least one more interview to go, so we'll be right back for our third interviewee. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we come to our third interview, and it's going to be with none other in the AM class, Andy Chell, the lovely gentleman we always love to have a chat to after each and every race. Andy, good evening to you. It's good to have you in the interview room. How was that today? I mean, you look like you were having fun out there in the wet.
Yeah, that was an entertaining race. That was, Paul. To be honest with you, mate. Didn't actually believe my spotter when it was telling me it was raining, though, to begin with, if I'm honest with you, because I think it came a little earlier than we all anticipated. Or because I forgot to check the weather radar before we started racing, I'd completely forgot we were getting rain at all. So, a bit of a shock, but also, yeah, it was real good fun.
Well, a lot of fun to be had out there. And in terms of how your day started, qualifying 18th place overall, 11th in class, but a very tight qualifying field this time out for the AMs. And in general, I think it was 1 point from 4th all the way down to 18th place, only about 1.3 seconds separating the field.
Yeah, it was quite close. I mean, there was between practice and qualifying, I lost about half a second. I don't know what it was. I don't know if I was just pushing a bit too hard or what in qualifying. Couldn't get it to do the times I was doing in practice. So I think it was about half a second that I'd lost. So maybe a little closer up to the others in the qualifying session. I don't know if it'd have put me up much higher. Maybe it wouldn't put me any higher at all. I don't know, but. Yeah, it was a little bit of disappointment on that because I just couldn't get it to do what it was doing, but still happier to be qualifying closer to the field now that I'm getting more used to the GT4. I mean, like in Thruxton, as I've said, it's a very fast circuit, and I do enjoy that in it anyway. So I don't know if that's helped out a bit as well, but yeah, it was very close, and to be honest with you, there's improvements there that I'm happy with. I just wish I'd have been able to do what I could do in practice just to see where that had stuck up. But yeah, it was still silver linings. Silver linings.
Oh, indeed. And that's the one thing that I definitely do love about your approach to racing. There's always a silver lining, although we do have to address a little bit of a darker cloud. Before the clouds actually did properly arrive, what happened on lap 1? Because the car went round very quickly.
Yeah, I think a little bit too, as Martin Brundle would say, what is it? Request overriding adhesion on the rears there. Just a little too early on the throttle coming through the third corner. With it unsettled because I was a little closer with us being close battle in with the pack around. Didn't account for it bouncing as we went over the curb, and yeah, it just looped the car. 100% on me. Just I didn't anticipate it. Didn't think about it being cold and just a little bit too much on that loud pedal. But that being said, I think I was fairly quick enough in the dry to catch up to the back end of the pack again, which, to be honest, helped me out a little with the rain, because then when it started raining, I could see people ahead of me and I could work out roughly where it was getting a bit wetter. So yes, definitely definitely a dark cloud on that one, definitely. But these things happen, don't they? It's one of them. 100% on me, and yeah, probably cost me a little bit, but also made me calm myself down a little as well. So yeah, it was one of them, unfortunately.
Oh, indeed. A bit of an unfortunate moment, but let's also talk about some positives. You didn't give up at any point in the race, and we did see you really settle down in these wet weather conditions as they continued. And in fact, we saw you start to gain some places and time, moving gradually up to a 9th place finish. And you weren't too far behind 8th place right at the very end.
Yeah, I didn't realise how close to 8th I was getting, to be honest with you. Which is a again, an improvement on where we've been seeing. There's been some mistakes in previous rounds, so it's nice that that's starting to tighten up. But yeah, the wet, I was loving it. Even though after, I think it's like 4 or 5 laps, the tyres just, I think I cooped them, if I'm honest with you, because I was pushing to try and catch Hines, because he was, I think, about 6 seconds, and I was catching him about a second a lap. And then as I got to around about 3.5 seconds, the tyres screamed they'd had enough, and where I was able to push it through corners, it started pushing me out wide and not enjoying it. So I had to settle it back down again, try and cool the tyres off, as daft as that sounds in the wet, because I'd definitely overworked them. That took nearly a stint just to get them to even start trying to grip up properly again. So that cost us a bit. But then, as you say, a little bit of luck with other people having even worse nights, which you never hope for, you never wish for, but it is helpful. But yeah, again, like I say, the pace was there, the enjoyment was there, so that's what it was tonight. To be honest with you, Paul.
Well, plenty of enjoyment, like you say, and also just building that pace up and finding happiness in all the laps you're putting together. I mean, that's what we do love to see, you keeping at it each and every round. But of course, it's been a challenge today with the wet weather conditions and the speed of Thruxton. In 2 weeks' time, we've argued about the ultimate challenge of a circuit. Of course, it is the Green Hell. How are you fancying the challenge?
Last time I was there, it didn't go very well. Oddly enough, you were commenting on that race. Upside down after about 7 corners, I think it was. So if we get to 8 corners, it's a personal best. But no, in all seriousness, it is a very difficult track. I mean, it's 78 corners, I think, something like that. So there's a lot to try and remember. So there's going to have to be a lot of practice put in for it. I am racing it this weekend in the GT3, so that's going to help me out a little bit to get the muscle memory of where the track's going, and then I can start focusing on the intricacy of trying to drive the GT4 around there opposed to driving the GT3. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be able to get enough practice in for it to at least be in some way competitive. But you know what it's like with other work commitments and things like that. So we will have to see on the night how it goes. Hopefully, like I say, if I get 8 corners in the main race without being upside down, we've got a personal best on the go. But we will see on the day.
Oh, fair play. Well, I look forward to seeing you out on circuit and seeing what you can do at the Nordschleife. And hopefully, like I said, we get to see you make a few more corners, perhaps even quite a few laps of the racing. But, Andy, just before I do let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast night? 'Cause I know you've got quite a few fans in the YouTube chat.
Yeah, I did see that. I did see the all of the Quatermass, well, at least 3 or 4 of the Quatermass boys in there. So, firstly, as always, the SRM crew that put this on, yourself, for the amazing broadcast that you put on. All the other drivers, actually, I was speaking to a few of them in the cool down room about how much they have actually made me welcome, despite the fact that it's my 6th race with the with everybody. So they really made me welcome, and yeah, all the Quatermass team for coming along and supporting, because again, without people coming and watching and supporting, we wouldn't get these put on. So really appreciate it. So thank you very much to everybody.
Well, Andy, we have to give a big thank you to you for joining me in the interview room as always. It's been a blast catching up with yourself. I'm glad to hear you found fun out there today in round number 6 of the championship. We continue to look forward to seeing how you can continue to move forward as the season winds towards its conclusion. But until next time, my friend, congratulations on your performance today. Have a lovely rest of your evening, and we will see you back in Germany in 2 weeks' time.
You will. Thank you very much, mate. Have a good night.
You too. So hearing there from Andy Chell, ladies and gentlemen, the Quatermass Motorsport driver and one of the most loved drivers on any given grid. And to be fair, he's one of those drivers where, whilst he's not the quickest out there, always looking to have fun, always looking for the positives. And the positives today being the fact that whilst it did go a little bit backwards in the race itself, he had a lot of pace in practice, couldn't quite unlock it when it came to qualifying. But in the race, after he'd righted the wrong of the open lap spin, he was able to get his head down and start to move forward. Now, of course, some of those places being made at the gains of the losses of other drivers, but sometimes that's the way it goes. Nobody wants to make up places through others' demise, but sometimes that's the way. These wet conditions could definitely play to your advantage, and in the end we saw Andy Chell look increasingly comfortable in the wet, and that's why he's able to make his way up to 9th and wasn't too far behind John Roberts in the end as he chased down what could have been an 8th place finish in the AM class. Still, the spin may have cost him it at the start, but I suspect if he gets his head down and practices for and in Nordschleife, if he's got the time to, we could see another top 10 performance in the AM class from Andy Chell. Could we see him even close up on his first top 5 this season? Well, for all that and more, we'll have to wait and see what is to be in 2 weeks' time from today. But with that, ladies and gents, that concludes our interviews for today. And with that, let's take a look back at who exactly we've spoken to this evening. And here we go. So we had 3 interviews this evening. First up, we spoke to none other than Lee Berridge from Boosted Motorsport, your AM class winner today, becoming the 4th AM driver to take a win in class this season, and will come in at a critical time too in his championship campaign. Of course, we also did have the opportunity to catch up with Guy Edwards, the 6M Motorsport driver in the pro class. And we're absolutely brilliant to hear from him on his escapades to take that 2nd place finish. And we're in the end not quite able to keep with Stuart Reynolds all the way to the finish, but at the same time as well able to put pressure on him in the opening half of the race and really able to give us a breakdown of exactly where that pace did come from and when it did go away. And then lastly, we spoke to Andy Chell, the Quatermass Motorsport driver in the AM class, talking about his rising pace and the fact that whilst he had the pace in practice and it didn't pay off in qualified, he definitely was able to get things together as the race went on and he adjusted to the conditions. So well done to all 3 of our drivers today for their brilliant performances up and down the grid. And well, thank you to them all for joining me in the interview room. And we look forward to plenty more interviews with our drivers in 2 weeks' time in round number 7. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know how you could get on the grid at Sim Racing Magazine, well, for all that and plenty more, of course, you could join our official Discord. Invite link available on screen, and there you can see it. And if you do want to join a very friendly, a very professional and welcoming sim racing community, then Sim Racing Magazine is one of the #1 places you could go, so there's no doubt about it, if not the #1, and you won't find a more welcoming place where the racing is fair and first and foremost, foremost, it's all about being respectful towards one another. Indeed, we'd love to see you on the grid, whether it be for the remainder of this season or indeed a future season of the GT4 Challenge or other series we do have planned throughout 2026 and beyond. But at this point in time, we would like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our series sponsor for this season, and that firstly is our title sponsor of Oris Digital. And small teams can make a huge impact in the digital marketing and e-commerce space, and Oris Digital knows that best. With 20 years of collective experience in growing businesses through online marketing channels via the provision of services including affiliate management, Amazon marketing, and digital strategy, Oris Digital delivers tangible results to its clients. And if you'd like to know more about how Oris Digital can help you grow your business, be sure to head to their website today at www.oris.digital, and well, you'll find out everything you need to know. But with that, we'd also like to take a moment to say a thank you as well. And a big shout out to one of our series partners, who does include Aburis Watch. And one of our drivers, Rob Sharp, runs Aburis Watch, which designs and markets watch faces for smartwatches running Google's Wear OS operating system. This SRM-themed watch face, which you can see on screen, is available on the Google Play Store by just searching for GT4C. It features a pit board that includes your race position, which improves as you near your step target for the day, a racetrack with selectable colours for each sector, and the trademark SRM branding along with other useful information such as your heart rate, so you can manage your excitement level in the next SRM race. And if you'd like to know more about how Boris watch it, excuse me, let me start over that again. This is a tongue twister, this one. It does catch me out every so often. If you'd like to know more about Aboris's watch faces for smart watches, there we go. We got it right that time. Why not head to their website at www.aboris.com. We'd also like to take a moment to give a shout out to one of our other series partners as well, and that is Roam Worthy. Now, buying the perfect caravan, motorhome or camper van can be an activity which leaves you going around in circles, but not with Roam Worthy. Built by technology people who love the road, Roam Worthy provides you with the tools you need to put you in the fast lane to buying the caravan, motorhome or camper van which meets your requirements via a website that is packed with real stock and no pushy sales personnel. Nobody wants that. If you'd like to know more, be sure to head to www.roamworthy.co.uk today to find out how you can be on the road to finding the perfect caravan, motorhome or camper van of your desire. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, will we now make our way to the next round, and after our trip to the United Kingdom for round number 6 at Thruxton, we make our way back to Germany and to the Eifel Mountains in 2 weeks' time, because on Tuesday, the 26th of May 2026, it's all aboard the Green Hill train. That's right, it's the Nürburgring Nordschleife, and we're going to be taking it on for a special round of racing. It's going to be slightly different in terms of the format compared to what you've seen so far this season, but similar in a way, approximately an hour of racing. But we'll bring you up to speed with that in 2 weeks' time, ladies and gentlemen. But definitely it's going to be a round filled with excitement and one to very much look forward to. Now, do keep in mind, of course, that coming out of round number 6, the overall Drivers' Championship, it is another win, a 4th of the season for Stuart Reynolds, and therefore the big question is, can anybody slow him down, or could he theoretically wrap things up with a round to spare in 2 weeks' time? And as for the AM class, well, we do have now a 4th AM winner in 6 rounds in the form of Lee Berridge. However, the championship lead is still going to stay relatively safe in the hands of Rob Sharp currently, but Lee Berridge will definitely be launching his way up towards what will be the top 5, and could he suddenly become an increasingly threatening factor as the season comes towards its conclusion, and could he potentially disrupt the aspirations of Trackmouse Racing's Stephen Codman and Mark Johnson as they both continue to try and chase down Rob Sharp in the closing stages? Well, all that and more, and how the story continues, we definitely recommend you tune in 2 weeks' time to see how it all carries on in the 7th chapter of Season 8. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we have been Sim Racing Magazine. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, remember to stay on track. Good night.